and for connected purposes.
Thank you. Clerk, next order.
Order number 9, motion, consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya.
Honorable Chepkonga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 29th June 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 24, subsection 1 of the Universities Act 2012, approves the award of charter for the Open University of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important motion, Mr. Speaker. This is something which should have happened very many years ago. Unfortunately, it looks like time has gone without this matter being considered or being brought to this House. Mr. Speaker, as you know, there have been 2-3 revolutions which have happened during the lifetime of the many generations that have existed in this world. The first revolution, Mr. Speaker, was the agricultural revolution. The second revolution, Mr. Speaker, was the industrial revolution. And the third revolution, which happened after 200 years after the industrial revolution, is the information and communication technology revolution, which happened in the latter part of the last century. Mr. Speaker, this particular university is being established after the third revolution, that is the information and communication technology revolution that happened, as I've just said, in the last part of the century. Mr. Speaker, what has been happening in this country is that those who want to participate or to register or enlist themselves in distant learning have been doing so through other distance learning institutions that are not established in this country. And so we've been left behind. I remember one situation, Madam Speaker, when we were considering one nominee in this House, in the 13th Parliament, in the 11th Parliament. Madam Speaker, he produced a certificate that he acquired through electronic means, where he went to school in a university that is equivalent to what we are considering this afternoon. And the question that was being asked, did you go to that university? You know, people were analog who were considering this particular nominee. They did not know that there is something called e-university. And so it became very difficult. I remember at some point, his degree was rejected because it had not been certified by the Commission of University Education. Fortunately, Madam Speaker, this university was recognized by UNESCO. And as you know, UNESCO we are members of the UNESCO. And the law which we passed sometimes that year said that any recognized university will be recognized by the Commission of University Education. So, Madam Speaker, the draft charter for Open University of Kenya was submitted to the National Assembly on the 15th of June 2023 for parliamentary approval pursuant to Section 24, subsection 1, paragraph B of the Universities Act 2012. The purpose of the charter is to establish a national open university as a specialized university to offer university programs through distance and e-learning mode. As you know, Madam Speaker, one president who went to Robben Islands when he was jailed, the late Nelson Mandela, once said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change your world. And one of the drafters of the US Constitution, by the name Benjamin Franklin, said, education pays the best interest. Why are we then establishing this university? Pursuant to Regulation 43.3 of the Universities Regulation 2023, it provides for requirements for an application for the establishment of a national open university, which include, among others, a cabinet resolution declaring the mandate of the proposed National Open University and a draft charter. These documents were submitted to Parliament through the office of the Leader of Majority Party. Section 24(1), paragraph B of the Universities Act 2012 provides for the establishment of a National Open University as a specialized university to offer university programs through distance and e-learning mode. Such a university is to be established by His Excellency the President on the recommendation of the Commission for Higher Education through the Cabinet Secretary for Ministry of Education with the approval of Parliament. The Honorable Speaker, the establishment of the Open University of Kenya is an avenue for enhancement of open and distance learning as captured in various policy instruments of government. These include the Sessional Paper number 1 of 2005, the Sessional Paper number 1 of 2019, the National Education Sector Strategic Plan of 2018 to 2022, the Vision 2030, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. By Gazette Notice number 11920 of 30th September 2022, the President, His Excellency the President, appointed the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform. Part of the terms of reference of the Working Party was to recommend a framework of the operationalization of the National Open University of Kenya and a framework on open distance and e-learning. Honorable Speaker, the rationale for the establishment of this Open University of Kenya is as follows. One, the basic philosophy and the primary objective for the open universities worldwide is to expand options and opportunities for training, in-service, skills upgrading, capacity building, and continuing education. The Open University of Kenya will expand access to university education through flexible mode of study. The intention, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that wherever you are in this country, that you will not be disadvantaged because of distance to the universities that have been established in this country. So that if the university that you have been invited to join that university, the distance is too far. For instance, someone from Turkana may have been admitted to Pwani University, and that could be very expensive in terms of distance. You can register through the Open University and do your course and finish and complete without leaving your area of residence. You can do all those things within your house, within the community. Secondly, Madam Speaker, the university will break barriers in access by the difficult-to-reach groups through flexible admission criteria and by systematically building on prior learning. It will help to overcome geographical barriers to access by facilitating access in different localities using technology. Third, the focus on lifelong learning will ensure that no one is left behind in line with the constitutional requirement for non-discrimination and inclusion. It will provide opportunities to the youth, elderly, persons with disabilities, minorities, marginalized groups, including those in various forms of work who wish to pursue upward mobility or to diversify their skill sets. Madam Speaker, this is a very good opportunity for members of Parliament who want to further their education. There could be members of Parliament who are here who have a bachelor's degree, and they want to advance that to a master's and to a PhD degree, Madam Speaker. While they are sitting here, they can be learning. They use the tools that we have here, and they can be able to access the universities. And Madam Speaker, those who want, maybe those who have come to this house, Madam Speaker, as you know, we have some challenges. SRC says that we do not have any qualification. That's why our salaries are ranked and pegged at the level in which we are. Possibly, if every member here had a degree, Madam Speaker, we would be paid over 1 million shillings like all the others in the government sector. And so this is an opportunity for members of parliament to acquire universities while working in parliament. Fifthly, Madam Speaker, the proposed university will save the government the high cost of establishing and maintaining many conventional universities, as it has the potential to absorb large numbers of students at a relatively lower unit cost. As you know, we have students who are visiting here this afternoon, and we want to welcome them. I hope that one of them at some point will join the Open University of Kenya once we approve this university. Madam Speaker, the proposed university will initially offer 8 flagship programs. That will be the initial programs that will be offered by this university. These will include 6 bachelor's programs, universities, Madam Speaker, which will include the following: Bachelor of Data Science, 2, Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics, 3, Bachelor of Technology Education, 4, Bachelor of Entrepreneurship and Business, and 5, Bachelor of Economics and Statistics, and finally, in bachelor's category, Bachelor of Agri-Technology and Food Systems. The proposed university will also offer 2 of the following postgraduate programs. 1, Leadership and Accountability. And this is very good for members of parliament. You know, there are very many members of parliament who have come for the first time, and they can register so that they can be better leaders in their constituencies and register for Leadership and Accountability postgraduate degree. Second, Madam Speaker, we will have a postgraduate degree in Learning, Design and Technology. The physical seat of the proposed university will be located at Concert Technopolis, while its virtual presence will be supported on a learning management system with both physical and cloud services. Currently, the seat is hosted by the National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation, that is NACOSTI, headquartered on a temporary basis. The admission of the first batch of students is projected to happen this year, once the House approves, by September of 2023. Honorable Speaker, the Committee on Delegated Legislation, having engaged the Cabinet Secretary for Education on Thursday, 29 June 2023, in its consideration of the draft charter, observed that the Cabinet Secretary, at its first special meeting held on 27 April 2023, considered and approved the Cabinet Memorandum on the establishment of the Open University of Kenya as required by Section 24 of the Universities Act. The Cabinet also approved the transmittal of the grant of Cabinet approval on the establishment of the Open University to Parliament for its consideration and approval. The committee further observed that the proposed Open University of Kenya will expand access to university education through flexible mode of study and by expanding options and opportunities for training, in-service skills upgrading, capacity building, Madam Speaker, and continuing education. Honorable Speaker, having examined the draft charter for the establishment of Open Universities of Kenya, the committee recommends to this House that it approves the award of the charter for the establishment of the Open University of Kenya pursuant to Section 24, subsection 1 of the Universities Act number 42 of 2012. Madam Speaker, with those very many remarks, I would like to request the members who are present this afternoon to consider this charter and approve. And I therefore beg to move, and I would like to request the Honorable Ruku, member of the Committee on Delegated Legislation, to second. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Ruku.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to second the adoption of this report. Madam Speaker, the Open University is targeted to be the center of excellence in open and distance learning, e-learning, and will serve other universities in building capacity in distance and e-learning education. It will certify critical expertise for open and distance e-learning institutions and practitioners and institutionalize research to generate new knowledge and improve practice in the area. Madam Speaker, the university will admit both local and international students, hence create opportunities for international publicity,
Honorable members,
knowledge sharing.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members, this motion that is being seconded by the Honorable Ruku is extremely important. And I would like to order that you consult in lower tones so that those who would like to listen are able to hear the Honorable Ruku. You may proceed, Honorable Ruku.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for protecting me. And allow me to just go back one paragraph. Madam Speaker, the university is targeted to be a center for excellence.
Please proceed.
Madam Speaker, the university is targeted to be the center of excellence in open and distance e-learning and will serve other universities in building capacity in distance and e-learning education. It will certify critical expertise for open and distance e-learning institutions and practitioners and institutionalize research to generate new knowledge and improve practice in the area. The university will admit both local and international students and create opportunities for international publicity, knowledge sharing, cultural exchange, and eventually branding our republic. This will position Kenya as an exporter of higher education. Kenya citizens in the diaspora will also provide their children with access to a Kenyan education. Madam Speaker, the recent recognition of Kiswahili as one of the official languages of the African Union will create a market for proposed university which will launch a program in the second year. Overall, and the proposed university will also earn our nation foreign exchange. Honorable Speaker, in preparation for establishment of the Open University of Kenya, the Technical Working Committee undertook various critical activities, such as developing the requisite consultative document, namely the charter, blueprint, and proposal of the proposed university instrument, such as the logo, seal, and mace. Other pertinent documents include open distance and e-learning policy, student handbook, student rules and regulations, admission criteria, staff terms and condition of service, 5-year strategic plan, ICT infrastructure requirement, and digital library requirements. The documents were approved by the Commission of University of Education and the Cabinet, and was submitted to the National Assembly for approval as required by Section 24(1) of the Universities Act number 42 of 2012. Upon approval, the Cabinet Secretary of Education shall submit the same to His Excellency the President, William Samoei Ruto, for award of the Charter. Madam Speaker, the committee also observed that the draft charter and also been reviewed by the Office of the Attorney General for forwarding to the Parliament for approval pursuant to Section 24(1) of the University Act number 42 of 2012. Madam Speaker, I support.
Honorable Ruku, you second?
I second, sorry. Madam Speaker, I second this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ruku. Honorable members, before I propose the question, Seated in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, we have several schools. One, Matweku Secondary School from Rongai, Nakuru County. Jenga Boys Secondary School, Kirinyaga Central from Kirinyaga County. Honorable members, also seated in the public gallery this afternoon, we have Ngado Secondary School, Gatanga Constituency, Moranga County. Makutano Academy from Mbere Constituency, Embu County, and Kiambogo Secondary School, Naivasha in Nakuru County. On behalf of the Speaker of the National Assembly, we welcome you to observe proceedings in the House. Honorable members, before I sit, I would like to propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 29th of June 2023, and pursuant to provisions of Section 24(1) of the Universities Act 2012, approves the award of charter for the Open University of Kenya. Honorable Nyikal, you are saying point of order.
Yes,
I would like to open for debate. What is out of order, Honorable Nyikal?
Madam Speaker, I acknowledge this is a very important motion. And Madam Speaker,
honorable members, the honorable lady members seated at the back, I know that you might be having an extremely important discussion there, but I would like to ask you to consult in lower tones so that we may proceed with business in the House.
Madam Speaker said this is an extremely important motion, and I think it is progressive and takes us in the right direction. But there's something, Madam Speaker, that...
It is out of order, Honorable Nyikal.
What is out of order, and I would ask whether it is in order, why is this coming through the Committee in Delegated Legislation and not the Committee on Education? I've looked at 24 Universities Act 24(1). It just says through Parliament approval. But one would have expected that in this is being an education issue would come through the Committee on Education. And has the Committee of Education actually gone through this? Madam Speaker, I would like to be maybe informed on that, because it looks as if that is not in order, in my view.
Honorable Nyikal, this is based on Standing Order 210. It is a regulation, and that is why it has come through the Departmental Committee on Delegated Legislation. So there is nothing out of order, Honorable Nyikal. Now I would like us to proceed, and I give the first opportunity to the Majority Leader, Honorable Ishungwa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I'm sure the Honorable Nyikal is now satisfied. I know he's a stickler to procedures and a very diligent legislator, and I would really encourage especially our young and new members to learn from the likes of Robert Mbui and Professor Nyikal, and of course the chair of the Delegated Legislation, and also use this opportunity to thank the Delegated Legislation Committee for ably considering this particular charter for the Open University, and particularly commend the member from Mbere North, who has distinguished himself over a very short time as a very diligent legislator. I can see he is following the footsteps of the chair of the committee, and of course Professor Nyikal. And he has ably articulated the issues that pertain to the Open University of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, it's indeed true, as a member from Mbere North, and I think he's now acting as a de facto vice chair of this committee. Coincidentally, I've even forgotten who is the vice chair. I assume he's a vice chair because he's become very diligent. And Honorable Speaker, you also witness that whenever he takes your seat here, he's also very diligent in articulating other issues, even on other bills and motions, and is encouraging to see that there indeed new members who have taken their work very seriously. Honorable Speaker, I was saying, as you said, that the Kenya Open University will, or the Open University of Kenya will indeed expand the access to university education for many of our people. Honorable Speaker, you know, under our new constitution of 2010, access to education, basic education, and we are at a point in this country where university education now is almost part of our basic education and is a fundamental right that is guaranteed to all Kenyans. And this access to university education, Honorable Speaker, should be available to Kenyans from wherever they come, irrespective of the background of families they come from, irrespective of what corner of this country they come from, Honorable Speaker. Every Kenyan child should be able to access university education. Honorable Speaker, through the Open University of Kenya, our country now joins the League of Developed Nations that have used e-learning and distance learning to further expand that access to higher education for their youth. And as a country now, whether you're in Wajir County, whether you're in Marsabit, whether you're in Kikuyu, whether you're in Kisumu Town West, where we have had this afternoon, there are rampant cases of insecurity. I believe if these young people in Kisumu Town West and other parts of the country had access to higher education and e-learning, they would not be engaging in crime, because they would even have expanded their skills and knowledge to be able to access job opportunities, as we were saying, even through our online, our ICT hubs that government is very keen to set up in our constituents. And I do hope, Honorable Speaker, that even as we embark on our recess today, we will utilize the time during our recess to create, or rather to guide our communities in public participation to ensure that in every of our wards, we allocate funds through NGCDF to establish these online hubs, because, or rather ICT hubs, because these ICT hubs, we also serve as part of the training centers where our youth who have cleared Form 4 can be able to access the Kenya Open University from the ICT hubs, where you have access to free Wi-Fi and access to the internet, and be able to attend classes online, Honorable Speaker, as the rest of the world is doing, Honorable Speaker. And it's indeed true, as the chair and the de facto vice chair were saying, that there are many of our children today who are accessing university students, and I know even in our families. I know in my own family, my own sister pursued her master's degree, and I think her bachelor's and master's degree from the University of South Africa online through distance learning. And therefore, we have been expatriating resources from our country, paying to foreign universities. And this now offers our country that golden opportunity to also tap into the resources of other students in our region. We can't continue, Honorable Speaker, priding ourselves that we are leaders in the larger East, Central and Southern Africa region, and we have no accessibility to our universities for foreign students. And I don't know why the clerk is sabotaging my contribution, because I was going to touch on the...
Majority Leader is 5 minutes, but we'll give you 2 more minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your indulgence. I was saying, Honorable Speaker, we also are giving our nation that opportunity to earn foreign exchange and enhance our foreign exchange reserves from those international students who will be able to access our universities. Honorable Speaker, I also note, Honorable Speaker, that as we approve this charter, we also have before the Committee on Delegated Legislation the University Regulations of 2023. And Honorable Speaker, I was just chatting with the chair and his members here, and I was telling them, those regulations have a total of over 102 clauses. And I want to encourage them to go through those clauses with a tooth comb. The concern you've had from Professor Njikaro, Honorable Speaker, is very legitimate, because if we use subsidiary legislation to amend acts of parliament, Honorable Speaker, it is not right. And a glance at the 102 clauses in this university regulations, Honorable Speaker, you may see an attempt to try and amend the Universities Act using subsidiary legislation. And I want to encourage the Committee on Delegated Legislation to go through those regulations with a tooth comb. And anything that is geared towards amending the Universities Act should come through substantive legislation that should be considered after public participation by the Education Committee, as the Honorable Professor Nyikal was articulating. Honorable Speaker, too, we must guard that the regulations, the university regulations of 2023 will only serve to enhance and to realize or actualize the implementation of the Kenya Open University and not any other sinister business. And particularly, Honorable Speaker, His Excellency the President has been very keen on remodeling how we now finance our university education. And I want to just alert the Delegated Legislation Committee to ensure that you do not in any way tinker with the policy that the President has already espoused on funding and financing of university education through regulations, Honorable Speaker. Any regulations that come to this House on funding of universities in this country should be in line with what the President has already launched and espoused as a policy for university funding, Honorable Speaker, so that we guard ourselves and guard our country from tampering with government policy and even tampering with acts of parliament using subsidiary legislation. And therefore, I want to encourage the committee to ensure that it comes through these 102 clauses and report back to the House through a report that should come and be approved. And I want to repeat, and I hope the chair is listening, a report for approval or disapproval before this House, because it will touch on money aspects, on funding of our public universities and how we finance university education. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I do support, and I want to encourage the young people of this country, when we have this open university ready and running at Konza Technopolis, to utilize the ICT hubs. And allow me to announce to the young people of Kikuyu constituency that as we speak at Nashut Technical and Vocational College, we have now access to internet. The cabling is ongoing this afternoon, and by next week, that particular institution will be ready, so that by the time we are accessing the Kenya Open University, the children of Kikuyu will not have to travel distances to access university education. They will not need to pay hostels. They will now be able to learn from their backyards in Kikuyu in every village, as we promised them, Honorable Speaker, with His Excellency the President when we went to campaign there. And Honorable Speaker, this open university serves our bottom-up economic transformation agenda as we sold to the people of Kenya. And with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support and encourage the Committee of Education to ensure that we actualize this open university so that we also mainstream digital skills and capacity building in the priority areas of the bottom-up economic agenda along the 9 value chains that we have enlisted in our manifesto and which we funded through our budget appropriations this year. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Honorable members, the next opportunity goes to the Honorable Robert Mbui, member for Kadhiani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I think, Madam Speaker, this idea of the Open University of Kenya is very timely. I think it's listening to what is happening and noting that Kenya has spent so much money on distant learning and e-learning from outside there. It's a shock that this was not done ages ago. But nevertheless, the importance of education cannot be gainsaid. It's really an important thing, and especially higher education, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, if you look at the history of our education in this country, and now just talk about the time when I was at the university, things were very different from what is happening now. I remember at the university, we were actually paid by the government. We used to receive, about 5,040 shillings every semester. Madam Speaker, we were accommodated by the University Students Accommodation Board. All students were accommodated, we were fed, we actually benefited a lot, and the government was taking the issue of education very, very seriously. But Madam Speaker, if you look at the situation today, the current situation is that university students, their parents have to raise money to pay for them fees. The cost of living in the university hostels is too high. So what is happening is that a lot of them, you probably will be living in the nearby estates, and those are the places where they end up getting involved in drugs and alcohol abuse. Madam Speaker, you know that the cost of living is so high that even those students in the university, they hardly can afford food. And Madam Speaker, when I was at the university, the team for rugby in the University of Nairobi, the Mean Machine, was actually the champions of the country. Today, I doubt whether any one of those students can actually go and compete favorably outside there because they are malnourished, they don't get enough food because of the cost of living and because of the situation. So, Madam Speaker, what the government has done with this idea is that because of the changes that we have faced as a country and because of the changes that are happening all over the world, we have to adapt. And Madam Speaker, what are the changes that we have gone through that make us have to go to e-learning and distant learning? One, of course, is that a lot of money has been spent by Kenyans pursuing higher education. They can't afford to do it in our local universities because of the cost. So they've gone and spent a lot of money outside there. So when we do that for ourselves, then we will be saving money for the country. Two, Madam Speaker, there's many more people pursuing university education now than those years back then. So it is a way by which you can have more people accessing higher education. So it's really a brilliant idea. Of course, Madam Speaker, not to forget that in 2020, we were hit by a disease called COVID-19, which unfortunately forced us to shut down our learning institutions. Now with e-learning, with distant learning, with that concept, education can continue even when we have such life-threatening diseases. So, Madam Speaker, it's really, in my opinion, I think it's really a game changer. But, Madam Speaker, I have one major concern. Much as I support this, my concern is about integrity in the education sector in this country. Madam Speaker, every year we have exams, proper exams, national exams in primary school, in secondary school. And Madam Speaker, almost every year there are cases, rampant cases of exam cheating. And these are people that are frisked before they walk into the exam room. Those exam papers are kept in a store under lock and key in a police station. But still somehow, we still manage to have cases where people have stolen the exam. Some schools are benefiting from the stolen exams. So I'm asking myself, even as we support this, how sure are we that those students that will be online learning and doing exams are the ones that will be getting the certification, Madam Speaker? That is one thing we must figure out to sort out, because as a country, we really do have a problem of integrity. And we must make sure that as we do this noble idea, we introduce systems to make sure that those that are registered in those universities are the ones that will learn there and are the ones that will do the exam there. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Rindikiri Mugambi, member for Buri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this noble proposal on the Open University. And just like other members have stated, I think this is the greatest opportunity that the majority of our kings have across the country. Madam Speaker, there are so many parents who are not able to take their student, their sons and daughters, to the universities because of costs relating to the tuition fees, relating to accommodation, and the other maintenance costs for our children. Madam Speaker, this comes handy because the people of Bori, the children of Bori will benefit. Those ones who did not have opportunity of having and don't families to take them to the university and afford the costs, this is the best option. I join to say that this is a very novel idea. It's going to create accessibility to majority of our children. It's going to ease the burden of expenses to our parents. It's given to give alternatives where there wouldn't have been any alternatives. The only issue, Madam Speaker, that I would like to note is some courses might not be offered by this Open University. I am worried about the science subject, very important subject, that we are encouraging our kids to learn. For example, the technical programs requiring practicals, requiring guidance, requiring careful assessment. Madam Speaker, the other issue is the pricing. We really need to know what the cost of costing will be, because we can be excited of saying it is cheaper, but still we need to know the proper costing of the university. Madam Speaker, the issue of integrity has been alluded to by my senior Member of Parliament for Kadiani. I'm also worried because we know there are so many people in this country who have degrees but who never passed the minimum requirement. I don't know how those assessments for joining the Open University will be carried out and by who. It is very important, right from the beginning, we make sure that even if it is as accessible as much, we must put stringent measures to ensure those ones who will be pursuing the e-learning and the e-learning through to the Open University, they are people who have met the minimum requirements. Mr. Speaker, I also would like to hear from the proponent the timelines for their degrees. I think it is very important. Again, Madam Speaker, I think I recommend that all the universities, whether e-learning, open, or the existing, that we have internship programs, how they will be managing the internship programs for the student who will be learning through Open University. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, it is a good and noble idea. Now that the government is doing a lot of connectivity on the internet, the only disadvantage we could have is that let's not open this university, let's not give them the charter, because some areas of this country might be disadvantaged in terms of internet connectivity. Meaning we must have electricity in all the counties, in all the constituencies, in all the wards, if we have to create fairness for our students to learn from all corners of this country. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, this is a good, noble idea, and I support it. But they need to do the adjustment, because I need to know what they are doing specifically on the science subjects, for a technical subject which are not part of this program. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member from Buri. The Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, Member for Kitui Central.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to support this important motion on the issue of awarding a charter for the Open University of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this issue is long overdue in this country, because open universities have actually been helpful to many countries, and more so the developed countries, Honorable Speaker. And as the mover did say, Honorable Speaker, one of the advantages of these open universities is the issue of access to education, where, Honorable Speaker, those parents who are not able to send their children out there to other countries will be able to access education just from their homes, so long as you have internet connection and you have a machine called a computer, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what we'll do is that even as Kenyans benefit from this open university, the region will also benefit, because I think we are becoming a trailblazer.
Dr. Makali Molu, yes. I'll take a minute. Honorable members, we have students seated at the public gallery from Kangaru Girls High School, Manyata constituency in Embu. I would like to welcome them to the National Assembly so that you may observe proceedings of the House. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much,
sorry about the
and
disruption, and I would like to request you to
proceed. It's good that our daughters are in-house, because they are going to be beneficiaries of this Open University when it becomes operational, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, as I was saying, what will happen is, even as Kenyans benefit from this university, the region will also benefit, because our neighbors Uganda, Tanzania, and the rest will actually have not started these open universities, and they will be benefiting from this Kenyan open university. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, which is important is this Open University of Kenya will also be able to assist Kenyans in terms of accessing higher education. There will be a lot of facilitation, and what has happened in countries where this Open University is actually in place, Honorable Speaker, a lot of the countries are making a lot of money through payment of fees and also accommodation. Honorable Speaker, you'll appreciate that in some countries, many students who visit, Honorable Speaker, will be able to like Kenyans, a lot of Kenyans are enrolled in different courses in different universities. For example, the South African one, Honorable Speaker. So you find when they are in session, because at times students will be required to visit the universities for a short while, Honorable Speaker, during that time they will also seek for accommodation in those countries, and they'll be able to actually also make money for the countries. Likewise, Kenya will also be benefiting from the same. In a situation where the professor wants to have a one-to-one interaction with the student, and more so when they are doing their thesis and the other documentation, Honorable Speaker, you find that there are 1 week or 2 weeks in Kenya, and then they might go back to their countries. During that time, the country also makes money in terms of foreign exchange, Honorable Speaker. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, which is also critical, and I think it has been raised by my colleagues, is the issue of the infrastructure required to competently provide this service, Honorable Speaker. And you realize that, as usual, I see a number of regions of this country also being marginalized. For example, northeastern Kenya, where these issues of internet connectivity, Honorable Speaker, and infrastructure laying has not taken place. Far-flung countries, like regions like Lamu, Honorable Speaker, also yesterday we had the Mheshimiwa from Lamu also complaining about marginalization in Lamu East and other areas. So even as we award this charter, Honorable Speaker, I think it will be important for this House to make sure that then the required infrastructure, Honorable Speaker, is provided. Another advantage, Honorable Speaker, is a situation where with an open university, you can also tap from the best professors in the world, where you can actually consult such professors and ask them to educate our students from different parts of the world. So you get the best in terms of resource persons, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, to me, I think it is important as a House, we support this, but the issue of integrity of our education, the issue of Kenyans and the education system, Honorable Speaker, because, you know, Honorable Speaker, this idea of Kenyans getting fake certificates is very common. And what is very surprising is they are able to get these certificates from the O-level, university bachelor, university master, and I think there has even been attempts to get PhDs through the same system. So, Honorable Speaker, I think we really need to look at the credibility of our education system so that we make sure that those students who get these certificates, they are able to, they have actually earned the certificates. It's not a situation where they go shortcuts and they get the certificates. And I'm more worried about a situation where you might find other Kenyans who are educated assisting their either children or relatives to get these certificates, because now there might be no issue of physical presence where you confirm this and so and so. So this is another area we really need to guard. And these are issues of values, Honorable Speaker. So as a country, we need to invest a lot in our values so that at the end of the day, our students get certificates which they have genuinely earned through the education system. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to support this and congratulate the committee for our job well done, and request honorable members that we support this move. It is a good move for the country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very much, Dr. Makali. The Honorable Omboko Milemba, member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. A good idea with a few threats which can be really mitigated. An open University of Kenya certainly will provide better opportunities for the students. One, an open university will create a lot of flexibility in time and place of learning. An open university will also use modern technology, which is everywhere now, Honorable Speaker. It will also ease pressure on the physical facilities within the university and the high learning institutions. For instance, when we have university intake, we base our intake on the availability of spaces in the universities, which will not be the case. So with an open university, we shall get away from facilities and spaces within the university determining how many students go to university. Furthermore, it removes the idea of reducing the cost of education, because much of the cost of a university is courtesy of beddings and boarding. Remember, Honorable Speaker, I'm one of the advocates of removal of boarding schools, not only just at the university level, but even in the high schools, that we should do away with the boarding section so that we reduce the cost of education. And I see an opportunity under which the Open University will provide that situation whereby we shall reduce the cost of education. But I also wish then to indicate that the Committee of Education must come in to work together with the Committee of Delegated Business, because we need to align certain laws, and I'm happy that the pseudo vice chair of this committee is here, Mr. Ruko. There are certain laws that do not accept the degrees that are earned by certain universities, possibly including this type of university, with the system in Kenya. So we shall need to actually realign our laws so that the degrees that come from this type of university is accepted. Of course, with the charter, that should be a step forward. Because how many times do we see our students go to Uganda, go outside, do status of the Kenyan degree, and therefore they don't get employment? Honorable Speaker, many students have suffered this, wasted a lot of money going to universities outside. When they came back, they were not able to get job opportunities. I should also be quick to say that it is a very good opportunity to make education to be a forex earner for this country. Because if you go to a place like Boston, as a state, education is funded by simply the universities. What comes in as payment to the universities and comes in as foreign exchange to the country. So this will actually provide an opportunity for Kenya to actually earn foreign exchange from education, and this will be very good, and possibly also export the qualified people outside. And this will be very good for our system. Education should be earning us foreign exchange. I saw one of the members, and good luck, he's still in the House, Honorable Mbui, talk about how education was very well funded during the old times. And I think that was the nostalgia period of when education was a sacred cow. Those are the theories of a man called Todaro, the economist of education, who at that particular time when we got independence, education was still a sacred cow. And being a sacred cow, you went to school in order to be able to get employment which was waiting for you. And people would not even go for university because they would easily get that employment at A level and at O level. But things have really changed, and education is no longer a sacred cow, and possibly that's why boom was removed and things have changed. And that's why we are where we are. I would wish to say that the Open University, for me, will create Kenya and Nairobi as a hub for all other students from outside and around the region to actually learn in this institution and pay us money. I would also wish then to indicate that such a university must then have dollar accounts which are paid in money before they come here, because currently our country is lacking in terms of forex, and that's really what we need. But finally, the threat would be the standardization and the quality of the degrees coming from this university. But I'm not threatened with this, because even without IT, we already have people struggling with papers. You saw when we were going through the elections how papers could become a problem. So let's fix it also using technology, and this should take us way forward in expanding education for our students in this country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance.
Thank you very much, Honorable Omboko. Honorable Catherine Omanyo, member for Busia County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have looked into this with a grain of salt. Open universities or learning is very good for people who have no time, no choice to sit, just like other younger students who have all the time to be in class. And as we look at both sides of the spectrum, I think there are those who wished to have had the time to be in class just like anybody else, but they don't have, but they have the oomph. They want to continue with upping their levels of education and knowledge, expanding it. So if they can afford to go ahead and get some more skills and knowledge to be promoted even at their workplaces, so be it. Let this be free to whoever can go for it. And this kind of arrangement can also be flexible for people who hardly have time, because I've seen people even reading while in the car. They put those things in the ears and go online and start just getting somebody on the other side giving instructions. And before you know it, by the time they are out of a matatu, they've been learning. So it's not like a system where you must be in a traditional way in a class and listening to a teacher. And then we also see that because it's that flexible, it is more cheaper, it's affordable to compared to this other one, because some of the ways that are used in teaching are actually recorded. So there is no physical trainer or physical lecturer, but those recordings that somebody is given to listen to and make notes and then submit their homework. Also, I've been looking up into it, and then I was like, it is a good way of also just those people who have learned, they learned maybe in those days when things had not changed or the systems of education had not changed. Because if today my father was to resurrect from his grave with all the knowledge he had and the education he had, he would not even come to terms with what we are using today, because mostly it is digital. So for those who want to also catch up with the running world, with the new systems, the new digital ways, this is a very good way of actually expanding and coming up with ways of not looking archaic or analog. And to top on that, for the places that don't have maybe means or ways or internet, Wi-Fi, nowadays I see even people in the villages having Android phones they afford. So when we worry of places that don't have access to this kind of education, I think our people everywhere, even in the villages, are curious. They want to learn. So even somebody who did not have or had limited education in their life, out of curiosity, even if they are not after getting the degrees, they will just learn some things and beware, because knowledge is power, and that is all we are actually looking into, so that we don't have so many ignorant people or people who just don't care of what is happening, and they'll be part of a solution. Thank you.
The Honorable Tindi Mwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support and contribute on this report, noble report, which is supporting the creation of open university in the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I want first of all to commend my colleagues who have already contributed a lot on the advantages and disadvantages of having an open university in the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I want to highlight two areas where you'll find that the open university in Kenya will be very fundamental to the society. You will find that we have people living with disabilities who in some cases might not be able to access the learning facilities because some of the institutions lack the requisite provisions for the people living with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, you'll find that with open university, the person who is handicapped is able to learn from any place where he lives or where she lives, and that one gives access to education to such individuals. Mr. Speaker, you'll find we have people who are suffering from chronic diseases, and these people, some of them might require to be frequently seeing the doctor in hospitals and living near hospitals. With open university, Mr. Speaker, you'll find that these patients will be able to learn from wherever they are, if it's near the hospital or even or even if they are admitted in the hospital, Mr. Speaker, they'll be able to learn because the education is provided through digital means, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to support my colleagues who have raised the issue of integrity. I think we need to make sure that open universities in Kenya have got a high sense of integrity so that we don't see everyone who is claiming that he went to a certain university or learned through the laptop or computer, and maybe those people don't know even how the keyboard or the mouse looks like. Mr. Speaker, I want to support my colleagues also who raised the issue about sufficient access to internet. The government needs to make sure that, that Kenya is well connected to the internet so that each and every person living in any place in our Republic of Kenya is able to access internet and log in and be a student on Open Learning University, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, I also want to urge because I'm a member of the Committee of Delegated Legislation, we are also going to consider the number of courses that are going to be offered, Mr. Speaker, because when you look at the report, the undergraduate courses are only 5, postgraduate courses are only 2. Mr. Speaker, we need to increase the courses so that the learners have got a room to choose wherever they wish to study, and also what they know that if I study this, I'll be able to contribute very well within the economy of the Republic of Kenya. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the report about the Open University in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Very well. Honorable members, you have keyed in and we can see you here, so there's no need to even carry up your hand. The next on the line is Phyllis Bateau. Is she in the house? Honorable, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion on Open University in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I would want to say that this is a very noble idea and it has come at the right time. The world has become a global village and it's high time education should not be a very something complex to achieve, but we should access it within a very simpler means. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has come of age for this type of institution, just like UNISA in South Africa, where it now offers all programs which are possible, and it has graduated students from undergraduate up to the level of PhD. So I think for this particular innovation, this Open University, it is the best thing that has happened to Kenya, that can happen to Kenya, Mr. Speaker. During COVID, we experienced very difficult times where people were left staying at home, children were not going to school, people were not going to college, students were not going to institutions for higher learning. And if we had such an institution, I mean, learning would have been a continuous process. Students would be able to access knowledge just wherever they are. Mr. Speaker, there are so many advantages of these institutions which has been enumerated by the mover of the motion. For example, it will give access to those people who are living with disabilities, those who are not able to move from one point to another. A colleague here was talking about even people who are shy to go and progress in their studies because it has taken them time. It will give an opportunity for such people to go to school. Also, it will encourage exchange programs. As I said earlier, the world has become a global village. We will have students all over the world accessing programs in such an institution in Kenya, and we will also have our students accessing other programs in other countries. And in that case, Mr. Speaker, we will have educational tourism and foreign exchange will not be, Kenya will benefit from foreign exchange. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, for example, Moibin, farmers have sold land to take their children to access international education. We have massive migration of students to Finland, to Australia, to America, which is a good thing. We would wish that also students from those countries where our students are going apply for these programs in our open university so that we also benefit from the cross exchange. We have had people who are not able to afford programs which maybe are not offered in Kenya and they are offered abroad, struggling to raise money to pay international fee, to travel abroad. They look for visas even when they don't have enough resources. So such a university will enable us to access multiple programs within Kenya. How I wish the infrastructure is looked at so that everybody within Kenya can access. We should have internet all over the country so that it is not going to disadvantage other parts and hence marginalization begins. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion.
Very well. The Honorable Robert Bokosi is not in the House. So next is the Honorable John Mutunga, Tigania West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. Honorable Speaker, the Open University of Kenya is a great idea coming at this point in time. Honorable Speaker, I would like to say that it's actually late because we should have gone that direction way before. Honorable Speaker, having a charter means the university then can discharge recognizable certificates across the globe. Education is universal, and the only thing that is recognized across the globe is the fact that the university is chartered. And that is why it is important for us to facilitate the process of getting this charter so that this university can move on. Honorable Speaker, many things have been said by my colleagues. I just want to say a few. One of them is the fact that it will save time a lot for the people who want to do education because they can work at any time of the day. I don't think it has to be on specific times. People can work at night because they don't have to travel. Courses can be scheduled at any particular part of the day, and it can be structured in a way that even working class category of people can be able to access education. On the other hand, Honorable Speaker, there are those of us who have advanced to a certain extent in age, and they don't feel like appearing at the university in class with much younger people, especially their children. It is going to offer a great opportunity for them to advance their education. They want to go to school, all right, but they don't want to go to school with their sons and daughters, and therefore the Open University of Kenya is a great idea for them because they'll be able, therefore, to learn without necessarily mingling up with their children. On the other hand, Honorable Speaker, the Open University, which is going to be almost 100% digital, is going to allow better consultation between the student and the lecturer. What makes the student shy away from long-standing courses is because these consultations take long and they don't occur when they are required to occur. If the supervisor is an extremely busy person, then the student suffers. And therefore, there is possibility for them to arrange a meeting through the virtual possibilities, and therefore the supervision can go on without necessarily having to appear in person. And this will enable them to do their courses faster than it probably is going to be. It is also going to increase chances even for Kenya to source for students from outside Kenya. There are many people in this world who would like to have an opportunity to go for some studies, and we know even Kenyans enroll in universities across the globe through virtual means. Therefore, we are also going to offer an opportunity for those others from other countries who would like to have an opportunity to go to do education to join the university, the Kenya Open University of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this possibility is enlarging the scope of coverage. We are a young nation. Education is essential for everyone. In fact, education is almost a basic need. It's an equalizer for people. It's one that enhances or balances out the missing links. It plugs in the missing links in the sense that education enables people to grow, and education offers opportunities. So we are going also to increase the chances for people to have university education who could probably not have missed it if they were to go to school, as it were. It is also going to help us in this, the charter is going to enable the university to qualify to be offering degrees and other certificates. This is going to enable the university to collaborate with the other universities across the globe in the sense that they are going to be, therefore, operating at an equal space. It will enable also the recognition of the products from this university. That means that the certificates from this such a university are going to be, will enable people to move from one level to another, which therefore is going to enable us to increase the chances, as it were, and to increase the possibilities. Honourable Speaker, I do support this particular motion. Thank you.
The Honourable Caroline Neleche.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the motion on the consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya. Honourable Speaker, I think this motion is coming at a time when we really need it, because, Honourable Speaker, this country, there are so many people facing challenges of paying school fees. You find that nowadays many universities and colleges charge more on accommodation and other issues rather than tuition fee. And that is, the tuition fee actually is what will earn you the degree or the certificate at the end of the day. Honourable Speaker, I speak on behalf of hustlers, people with disability, girls and mothers, and all other people who have other duties and responsibilities that may hinder them from accessing or from leaving their homes actually to attend university education. You find that nowadays there is someone maybe does something that can give a small income, that can earn something small for their families or for themselves. But if that person must leave their home to another place to attend university education, it means that that particular person will forego any other activity. You find also, Honourable Speaker, that there are girls maybe who get children before joining university, and that responsibility of taking care of their children or being mothers or being wives will hinder them from traveling far away to access university education. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, we have good coverage of internet all over the country. People can even access or learn through their mobile phones. And it is still the same education that is offered worldwide in other universities. So, Mr. Speaker, I laud the committee for bringing in that motion. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that I would wish to be remembered, or that they should not forget about it, is they should also make sure that some courses are not completely offered in distant learning. During COVID time, Honourable Speaker, there were universities who even ran for like 1.5 years on science courses like medicine, like engineering. You find students who are learning online. Some courses or some degrees, Honourable Speaker, cannot be offered virtually. So they should actually make sure that they regulate, because if the universities are left to do whatever they want, others will feel all the courses to be virtual, not knowing that some need proper laboratories, some need practicals for the students to graduate. Another issue also that should be regulated is the fees charged. Honourable Speaker, as much as some universities or some colleges will feel that this is denying revenue to the locality, whereby people used to offer hostels to rent houses for these students, or the university was collecting some revenue from hostels, the fee should be regulated so that it makes meaning. Otherwise, if not, I'm sure some of the universities will charge the same fee for distant learning and the same fee for somebody who uses the facilities in the school. So as much as it is a good thing, it should also be taken care of so that people don't take advantages of others, and at the end of it all, meaning might be lost. Otherwise, I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Timothy Wanyonyi, Westlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for offering me this chance also to contribute to this motion, Mr. Speaker. An open university, Mr. Speaker, will offer great opportunity, especially to those who are not able to access the physical university, Mr. Speaker. These are people who normally students are given online courses. They do their courses online. They are assigned a tutor who will guide them through the course, Mr. Speaker. And this is a cheaper way of making sure that education is accessible to many, many students at the comfort of their, wherever they are, Mr. Speaker, even from their home, from wherever they are residing, so that they can now have this education, Mr. Speaker, reaching to them. I support this idea because, Mr. Speaker, there are many universities existing. We have many universities in Kenya, but still we have many people who cannot access because of the cost of many other things that come with it. Accommodation, because many universities are not able to provide hostels for students. Therefore, an open university that will offer mostly courses online will also be a cheaper way of also making sure that people are accessing education. And it's also, Mr. Speaker, that those who may go to this open university, if they are unable to continue, they can still transfer their credits, the credit to the other universities. If they want to transfer from the open university to the normal university, Mr. Speaker, they can transfer their credit to the other university. So it is not prohibiting, but it's also something that is much, much more flexible. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to support and encourage that this charter that is going to be issued, this is the first open university in Kenya. This is an idea that whose time has come, and people living with disability, people who are living in marginalized areas, those who are living in the nomads and all, Mr. Speaker, it will be much, much more handy for them, and they can access education from wherever they are, because now we have internet facilities across the country, and people can access even this through their mobile phones. They don't have to invest heavily in it. But, Mr. Speaker, as the past speaker just said, we need also to have regulation on this, because sometimes it ends up being abused, and we can easily start compromising the standard of education. So, Mr. Speaker, I support and that this is a good idea, and that the issuance of the charter to the Open University of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Tuku Kwenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, after a long wait, I finally have an opportunity to add my voice to this very important motion on the establishment of Open University of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I would want to state that education is a provision that is guaranteed and that should be given to every Kenyan, and it's enshrined in our Constitution, Article 43 of the Constitution of Kenya, that we gladly promulgated in the year 2010, states clearly that every child is entitled to education to sufficient levels, basic education for that matter. But I want to thank every effort by the Ministry of Education, especially Department of Higher Education, in establishing an opportunity or a platform whereby every Kenyan can access education. Because without it, then there are people who are limited to the extent and to which they would study, because our normal form of education is quite expensive, and especially when you get to the university level. And Mr. Speaker, I must state here that we are more than 30 years late because our neighbors in the East Africa, that is Tanzania, established one in 1992 and through an act of parliament, and the same was operationalized in the year 1992. That is to say, we are quite many years late, and it is just about time that, Mr. Speaker, we took this initiative to pass these regulations and have the same established. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we're going to reap bountifully from establishment of this university. For example, a child living in Kinangop, who is a son or a daughter of a peasant farmer, will have an opportunity now to access this education, and especially through the digital hubs that have been proposed by this government. And all we are asking and praying is that this government is going to actualize the actualization of digital hubs in every ward, so that then every child or every person who is interested with education, university education, will have access. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the government must really work on connectivity and taking network to places where there is no network. And I want to allude to the words of the Leader of Majority that indeed fiber optic is being laid across the country. Mr. Speaker, this kind of learning is not new to many Kenyans because of the revolutionary kind of learning that was brought about by COVID or during COVID, whereby students were now required to learn online. And of course, we have lessons that we've taken from online education as it has been going, where students have been learning virtually. Maybe many of us also have been, those of us who are scholarly, have benefited from the virtual services or learning. And Mr. Speaker, we have seen the shortcomings. There are many ramifications, and maybe we need to address them, even as we pass the award of charter for this this kind of learning. Of course, the issue of study materials, whereby you're supposed to download, maybe if the government is not going to avail network, it is going to be very expensive on students in terms of buying data and what we call bundles. Of course, the reliability of network, we know there's always fluctuation back and forth. There are also issues to do with absence, because maybe some of the learners are very young and they cannot maintain discipline in terms of making sure that they're in class when they're supposed to be there. But in essence, I would say that this is a great idea, whose idea is coming in late, should have been implemented many years ago. But with the change of technology, I believe that it's an idea that everybody should support. On the issue of the subjects that are, or courses that are going to be offered, of course, there will be limitations in the sense that they can only offer of social sciences and arts, because sciences cannot really be offered in this university, open university. I thank you, Mr.
Order,
Speaker,
honorable members. You are doing it everything wrong. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please, as you come in, just maintain the calmness of the House, and also don't pass between the member who is speaking and the speaker. Order. Honorable Jonathan Ngeno. Honorable Jonathan Ngeno. Order, honorable members. If you have that demand, it must come from yourselves. You know the rules of the House. Proceed, honorable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me also to weigh this particular motion. Mr. Speaker, a member is asking to call the mover, but Mr. Speaker, first we need to contribute, and then maybe the mover can be called later. Mr. Speaker, education everywhere has been noted to be the only equalizer that can make children from all divides have the same situation in their lives. The Speaker, I think from yesterday and today, there has been a very deep discussion, especially on matters of education. And I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, because our education, I think we have never had an opportunity to review the kind of education system we have in our country. We have had to review the Constitution, we have had to review the governments, we have had to review so many things in our, even the agricultural systems and all that, Speaker. I think we need to have a serious conversation on education in this country because it has proved to be the only system that is very consistent in uplifting the poor to be on the same level with the rich. It has proven to be the only system, Mr. Speaker, which has uplifted those who could not have managed to be where we are even today. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is time we put a lot of attention to education so that the kind of education that is given to our children and grandchildren is that type of education that will make them, that will make it easier for them to access the opportunities in this country. So, Speaker, in my thinking, this matter of open university is long overdue because it has been practiced in many countries across the world. It is only that our country had not had the opportunity to relook into it so that it can allow the students who want to study through these programs to access the education. So, Speaker, this open learning is like the distant learning. It is the easiest way to access education. It is flexible. For those of us who may not have the opportunity to go to class, may not have the opportunity to access the kind of universities that we want, we can access through e-learning. Our children in the remote areas, even especially with the introduction of this bottom-up economic transformation agenda, where we are going to be having Wi-Fi installations in every village, every ward. Mr. Speaker, I believe this one will allow our students. Remember in this country, Mr. Speaker, students who finish university or even who finish Form 4, they stay in the villages for many years simply because maybe they do not have fees, others because they cannot access the universities of their choices. Others who have also finished the university and maybe want to proceed with masters and PhD cannot do that because of the impediments of the situations that they face. With the introduction of all these Wi-Fis in the villages, our students who finished universities can proceed to study masters while they are still tammacking in their villages without necessarily going to university. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe this is very handy. Mr. Speaker, it will also be easier to access the kind of courses you want to access without much hassle. Mr. Speaker, it also promotes, especially, Mr. Speaker, initially when we had the Jubilee government, when it came to power in 2013, they had introduced the laptops to class 1s. Mr. Speaker, that was a very good idea. It's only that nobody wanted to redo it. Maybe they did what they did and got what they wanted and abandoned the idea. But, Mr. Speaker, if that system was to be promoted right from that ground level up to now, Mr. Speaker, accessing this e-learning would have been much, much easier. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support and I wish to say that our country is moving in the digital arena. We need to catch up with the rest of the world. Mr. Speaker, I thank you and I support.
The Honorable Rachel Nyamai, Kitui South.
Very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this important report by the Committee on Delegated Legislation, which is establishing a charter for Kenya Open University. Honorable Speaker, I'm very excited to talk about this because in 1998, when I was a young student, is the first time I heard of Open University, and I think it's long overdue. Honorable Speaker, I have looked at this document and I've listened to the mover of the motion and also the seconder, and I was very interested by the courses, and I would like to draw the attention of members to page 3 of this report, where the committee has identified, as per their discussions with the Ministry of Education and maybe the proponents of the university, the courses that they are going to start. Bachelor of Data Science, which is extremely important, Honorable Speaker. Our students are spending a lot of money. I think, Honorable Speaker, what is close to data science at the moment are the IT courses that are being offered by Strathmore University. So this is a very welcome move. Honorable Speaker, Bachelor of Science in Cyber Security. Honorable Speaker, as you may be aware, someone can call you today using a number that is familiar to you and maybe saved on your phone, speak using artificial intelligence in a voice that resembles the voice that you are aware of, and you can give information that can cause you lose money or lose valuables, Honorable Speaker. So these are courses that we need currently. Bachelor of Technical Education, Bachelor of Entrepreneurship, Bachelor of Economics and Statistics, and Bachelor of Agri-Technical and Food Systems is extremely important. Honorable Speaker, I would like to request the committee and also the Education Committee whether they can also go further and ask this Open University to go beyond these courses that they have identified and go for a degree which is extremely important in the world today, called Bachelor of Health Promotion and Bachelor of Education through Health Promotion, participatory health promotion, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, doctors have just realized that...
Order. Order, Honorable Member was just moved in. Go back and follow the rules of this House properly. You can't crisscross. Go back, please. Completely prejudicing the House. Thank you. Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I was just saying that one of the extremely important courses is a course on health promotion. And I was just saying that doctors have realized that treatment of diseases is not the most important in our health. And I'm very happy that the President, Dr. Samoei Ruto, has just realized that health promotion is extremely important and ordered the Ministry of Education not only to focus on curative health, but also focus on preventive health. That is why I'm saying that health education, health promotion must be taken seriously. And Mr. Speaker, this Education Committee can also reach out to the best universities of the world, which are Manchester University, University of Florida, University of Liverpool, Boston University, Columbia University, the University of Pretoria, and the University of Southern Queensland, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, when it comes to health promotion, reach to the best professors, like the professor who taught me health promotion, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to mention his name here, Biane Brun Jensen, Professor, Professor Jens Sagard, Professor Venka Simovska, and a professor in Australia who is called Professor Adrian Banman. Honorable Speaker, I'm saying this because this is a course that was started in this country. It is flourishing in other universities through Open University, and we have not been able to embrace it. So I hope that this House will take it seriously, that we need to embrace participatory health promotion. And the best way to do it is through this Open University, which will be based in Konza. As I finish, I'm excited about Konza, Honorable Speaker. And I hope that having this Open University here will also be linked to tourism. Thank you, Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Irene Mayaka.
There's no mic. Oh. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support this motion. And the emphasis that have been laid on the floor of the House today cannot go unnoticed, especially on matters relating to flexibility of the Open University program, and also the fact that it is easily accessible to even people who are abroad. Honorable Speaker, as one of the honorable members cited here, we do have an Open University in Tanzania that currently, as per the statistics of the country, it shows that it's the university that has the highest uptake of students. And so I stand here to also support this motion. And in particular interest, I just want to cite the ICT perspective of why this is very important for us. Because number one, Honorable Speaker, We are still struggling to transition from the third industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution as a country. And the fact that this particular university will have courses that are related to cybersecurity and data science, it will then help our country to be able to position itself in the fourth industrial revolution before we get into the fifth industrial revolution, where majority of countries are at currently. Honorable Speaker, I also just want to emphasize that even as we support this particular motion, is that we need to also encourage to have more of our young women joining the STEM courses so that we can have more women in this country participating in the space of the STEM environment. Honorable Speaker, you might very well know that we do not have enough engineers who are women in this country. We don't have enough women in the space of IT. And so for me, what I would like to really urge the implementers of this particular program is that they make sure that when it comes to uptake and encouraging the students who will be part of this program, that we encourage the female students. Honorable Speaker, as I finish, I also just want to emphasize on the importance of this particular course being accessible to the people who are also working, because this will enable even those of us who are in Parliament who want to further our education to be able to access this particular open learning university. Honorable Speaker, please protect me from Honorable Osoro, who is harassing me to finish up.
Honorable Soro,
still my time.
We don't want local. Proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your protection. And as I finalize, Honorable Speaker, I just want to say that let us all urge and ensure that we support this particular motion. It's very important for our country. It's very progressive, and it will take us to the next level. I thank you.
What's your point of order, Honorable
Whip? Mr. Speaker, I'm standing on and I was standing order 95. I would like to request that the mover be called to reply.
Well, is it the mood in the House that the mover be called upon to reply? Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye? Will those of a different opinion say nay? Mover, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this report has received overwhelming support by the members across the divide of the House. And you realize that, Mr. Speaker, the Open University will provide very key degrees, Bachelor of Science in Data Science, Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics, Bachelor of Technology and Technology Education, Bachelor of Entrepreneurship and Business, Bachelor of Economics and Statistics, Bachelor of Agriculture, Technology and Food Systems, and other very key degrees in postgraduate programs in leadership and running design and technology. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the members for the support, the committee members who have gone through this report and presented this report, the cracks of the committee, and more so, I want to stress the point that this report needs to be implemented. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Having confirmed order. Having confirmed that we have the requisite numbers, I now put the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee of Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 29th June 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 24(1) of the Universities Act 2012, approves the award of a charter for the Open University of Kenya. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, approval of the Defense Cooperation Agreement between the Government of the Republic of Kenya and the Government of the Republic of Seychelles. Presumption of debate.
Did we have any member who was on the floor? There was no one on the floor, and therefore we shall proceed with those who have keyed in. And the next to speak on this is Honorable Paul Biego Chesumei. Paul Biego, Honorable Member for Chesumei.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, sir, what I had wanted to speak about was education, so I beg to give to the next.
Very well. The Honorable John Kiragu, Honorable Member for Limuru. Not being in the House, the Honorable John Mutunga, Tigania West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this motion was there last week and we tried to speak to it, but the time was lapsed before. Honorable Speaker.
Order, Honorable Mutunga. May I bring the members to speed that we are now on a motion of approval of Defense Cooperation Agreement between the Kenyan government, the government of Kenya. Let me take it again. Approval of a Defense Cooperation Agreement between the government of the Republic of Kenya and the government of the Republic of Seychelles. You may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this collaboration is important to both the republics, the Seychelles Republic and the Republic of Kenya, because training together for such a force is important. Honorable Speaker, it will help them to share experiences, it will help them to develop the skills better than when they are doing it on their own. On the other hand, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to issues of discipline, we are witnessing in this country that there are many other countries from all over the world who would like to train in Kenya. We have European Union, some European Union countries, and UK soldiers training in Nanyuki and other parts of this country. And we have observed some cases of indiscipline within the disciplined forces. Honorable Speaker, as this is ratified, we need as a country to caution that interactions with the community need to be curtailed so that people are given their respect and their dignity prevails. Honorable Speaker, when you look at Seychelles, Seychelles and Kenya shares a coastline, they share a border. We therefore have an opportunity for an enlarged seashore where they can train. There is an enlarged body of water. Honorable Speaker, especially for our Navy, the two navies, the Kenyan Navy and the Navy from Seychelles, they will have a great opportunity to practice together. They will have a great opportunity to have joint trials and joint vessel testing in the waters, because we have an enlarged and longer, coastline. Honorable Speaker, training together again brings in issues of faster skill development and challenges. We will have our soldiers challenged, and those of the Seychelles also, challenging our soldiers and us challenging them. And in this particular respect, they will be able to we will get better material and better, soldiers at the end of the day. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to the two countries, the soldiers come from different, or rather the military personnel have come from different environments. They'll be able to share experiences from where they come. They'll build their capacities in view of those experiences, and you'll have a more rounded, people at the end of the day. Honorable Speaker, I support this particular collaboration. Thank you.
Yes, next to speak on this. Yes, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I raise understanding order 95. Will I be in order to ask the mover to be called to reply, Mr. Speaker? Because this matter has been debated since yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, since yesterday. Yeah. So that we can move to the next business, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, a member has risen for misplace on point standing order number 95 that the mover be called upon to reply. Is that the mood in the House that the mover be called to reply? Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as those of a contrary opinion say nay? Mover proceed to reply.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the members of this House. And this is the third day that this matter has been discussed. And DCA is a tool which is now globally accepted. And Kenya and Seychelles share a common border in terms of the sea. And this will help especially the Kenya Defense Forces and more so the Kenyan Navy to train more so with Seychelles. So I beg to reply.
Honorable members, having approved that we have the requisite numbers, I now put the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations on its consideration of the Defense Cooperation Agreement between the Government of the Republic of Kenya and the Government of the Republic of Seychelles, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 13th June 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8.4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the Defense Cooperation Agreement between the Government of the Republic of Kenya and the Government of the Republic of Seychelles. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as our contrary opinion say nay? No. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Consideration of the Consolidated Fund Service Expenditures under the financial year 2023-2024 budget estimates.
Mover.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee on its consideration of the Consolidated Fund Services Expenditures under the financial year 2023-2024 budget estimates, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 21st June 2023, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, before I get to the main text of the report, allow me, Honorable Speaker, to begin by thanking members of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee for working tirelessly to ensure that this comprehensive report is tabled in this House. Honorable Speaker, I also want to extend our gratitude as a committee to the National Treasury, the Office of the Controller of Budget, the Office of the Auditor General, and the Central Bank of Kenya for providing critical information in the process of reviewing the SFS expenditures, Honorable Speaker. The Controller of Budget and the Office of the Auditor General, Honorable Speaker, have over time proven to be very critical in promoting accountability and transparency in relation to the CFS expenditures, and have highlighted gaps which the committee is oversighting, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is important to remind members of this House that the Consolidated Fund services, normally abbreviated as CFS, are excluded from the Appropriations Act pursuant to the Article 221 of the Constitution, Section 7 of our Constitution. This is because, Honorable Speaker, they are a direct charge to the Consolidated Fund and thus do not require appropriation. This seems to be an unfamiliar aspect of expenditure in that expenditures can be undertaken without appropriation by the House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what we are saying in brief is that the SFS expenditures, unlike the other expenditures which we appropriate as a House, are never appropriated by this House. And so they just get direct charge to the Consolidated Fund. Honorable Speaker, for the benefit of members, the SFS expenditures comprise of the following expenditures. The first one is expenditures required to service our public stock of debt, being interest payments and redemption, that is maturity of public debt expenditures. The second item under these expenditure items, Honorable Speaker, is the pension expenditures. The third item is salaries for constitutional and independent offices, Honorable Speaker. The fourth one is expenditures related to guaranteed debt. Honorable Speaker, for the financial year 2023-2024, the SFS expenditures are the largest in terms of percentage, Honorable Speaker, at a value of 1.84 billion, Honorable Speaker, larger than the recurrent expenditures of the current government, which amount to 1.56 trillion, Honorable Speaker, and development expenditure, which is worthy Kenya shillings 807.64 billion, as approved by this House. Honorable Speaker, if you look at this figure of 1.84 trillion as the SFS expenditures, Honorable Speaker, it's about 70% of the projected revenue to be collected for the year 2023-24. And Honorable Speaker, if you compare this with also this figure, as we are talking about, Honorable Speaker, if you also compare it with the exports coming from the returns from our exports, Honorable Speaker, you find the figure is also quite high. So in short, we are saying, Honorable Speaker, these expenditures are very critical when you look at the amount. Unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, we have realized that this House, when you look at our standing orders, they are not very clear in terms of how do we address these expenditures, Honorable Speaker. And you can see, Honorable Speaker, even today, when we are discussing this important report, we've already passed the budget as a House, meaning we are not giving these expenditures the kind of the attention they deserve. And at the same time, Honorable Speaker, you realize these expenditures, they are taking such a huge chunk of our revenue, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in the financial year 2023-24, SFS expenditures are projected to amount to the figure I've mentioned, that is 1.4 trillion. And if you compare that with the last financial year, 2022-23, which has just ended, the figure was 1.553 trillion. This is an increase of Kenya shillings 283.4 billion in this year. And because they are direct charge to the Consolidated Fund, they will constrain our fiscal space, Honorable Speaker, by reducing the amount of resources available to finance other critical expenditures in the country. Over the medium term, Honorable Speaker, the SFS expenditures are projected to hit a figure of Kenya shillings 2.2 trillion. That will be by June 2027, Honorable Speaker. The increase, Honorable Speaker, is largely driven by expenditures required to service the growing public debt stock, which amounted to Kenya shillings 9.6 trillion as at April 2023, Honorable Speaker. Debt servicing expenditures, Honorable Speaker, on average, account for about 88% of the total SFS expenditures. What we are saying, Honorable Speaker, is if you take the totality of how much you are spending on these SFS expenditures, 88% of that goes to debt servicing, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in this regard, in the year 2023-2024, public debt service expenditure is estimated to amount to 1.625 trillion. This is an increase of about 265 billion, Honorable Speaker, largely on account of an increase in the external debt service expenditures from Kenya shillings 362.2 billion in the financial year 2022-2023, Honorable Speaker, to 622.47 billion. And this will be occasioned by a one-off payment for the maturing debt, sovereign bond, that has been allocated a total of 241.75 billion, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, while external debt will cause periodical increases over the medium term, the risks emanating from this domestic debt remains the main concern over the medium term. This is because while external debt is characterized by concessional financing with low interest rates and long grace periods, domestic debt is characterized by rising interest rates, shorter maturing period, Honorable Speaker, and then the debt keeps on increasing year after year. In the year 2022, 2023, 2024, Honorable Speaker, expenditures related to domestic debt servicing are projected to amount to 1.00 trillion. This is an increase on account of reopened or reissued domestic bonds and short-term treasury bills, Honorable Speaker. Interest payment expenditures will account for the largest share of the Kenya shillings 628.8 billion on domestic debt redemption. That will amount to 374.5 billion, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, external debt service is estimated as 622.5 billion, a 72% increase from the financial year 2022-2023, and this is as a result of an increase in external debt redemption expenditures for the year 2023-2024 that will amount to 475.6 billion, an increase due to the expected maturity of sovereign bond of US dollars 2 billion, Honorable Speaker. We all know about the Euro bond. That will amount to 241.75 billion, Honorable Speaker. External debt interest expenditures, Honorable Speaker, will also amount to 1.69 billion, an increase primarily driven by expenditures required to finance commercial debts and multilateral debt owed to the institutions such as China Development Bank, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the second item is pensions. And pensions expenditure will amount to 189.09 billion in the financial year 2023-2024, Honorable Speaker, an increase of about 16.45 billion. And this is mainly attributed to, Honorable Speaker, an increase in ordinary pension payments to Kenya shillings 91.23 billion in the financial year 2023-2024 from Kenya shillings 82.93 billion in the financial year 2022-2023. Occasioned by an increase in the number of retiring public servants, Honorable Speaker. That is about 12,290 public servants are going to be retiring. That is civil servants and military personnel in totality, Honorable Speaker. Furthermore, in the financial year 2023-2024, pensions are expected to increase the next by annual pension increase at the rate of 3% as from 1st July 2023, this month, Honorable Speaker. So that will also lead to increase in pensions. Honorable Speaker, salaries and allowances for constitutional and independent offices, that is the third item, as well as other miscellaneous expenditures, are expected to increase by 2% from Kenya shillings 4.62 billion to 4.73 billion. Honorable Speaker, finally, are the expenditures related to debt guarantee by government that are called up. Honorable Speaker, the House will remember that most of these loans, which are taken by parastatals and the county governments, are guaranteed by the national government. So when they don't pay up, Honorable Speaker, the debt can be called up. So as we are talking now, Honorable Speaker, the Kenya Airways guarantee became a liability to the government in the financial year 2022-2023, and payments have been charged to the consolidated fund ever since. In this financial year, Honorable Speaker, 2023-2024, this country is going to pay a total of 17.2 billion towards that loan which was guaranteed for KQ. So the year which has just ended, we paid about 16 billion. Another 17 billion will be paid, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, the committee has noted that the House has made resolutions on CFS expenditures based on its recommendations and as a background the follow-up of the implementation. For the year 2023-2024, the committee has come up with the following set of recommendations based on the consultative engagement held. Recommendation number 1, Honorable Speaker. In line with the financial consolidation plan, any in-year adjustments to the in the financial year 2023-24 budget estimates undertaken by National Treasury should be within the approved 2023-24 fiscal deficit, should be within the approved 2023-2024 fiscal deficit limit of 4.4% of GDP in order to mitigate against unplanned borrowing, Honorable Speaker. That is a total of 4.4, that's what the House approved. Number 2, in line with the House resolutions on the medium-term debt management strategy 2023, in the financial year 2023-2024, the National Treasury should adhere to the approved 50-by-50 mix of domestic to external borrowing, and any deviation in funding strategy should be approved by the National Assembly. Number 3, Honorable Speaker, 15 days after the end of each quarter in each financial year, the National Treasury should submit to the National Assembly a quarterly report on the status of all SFS CFS expenditures, indicating actual expenditures compared to the budgeted expenditure. That for any in-year CFS expenditure adjustments, Honorable Speaker, budget cycles going forward, the National Treasury should report the overdraft facility as well as all expenditures related to guaranteed debt as a separate and substantive components of public debt servicing expenditures and not under the salaries and allowances component of the CFS. Recommendation number 5, Honorable Speaker, the National Treasury should ensure timely payment of pensions to the pensioners and prioritize the prompt disbursement of employment contributions under the Public Servants Superannuation Scheme, Honorable Speaker. What we are saying, Honorable Speaker, as a committee, we have realized there is a serious delay in paying pensions to our retired civil servants. And it is time, Honorable Speaker, that our retired civil servants who have served this country faithfully are paid their dues in good time so that they don't die before they enjoy their terminal benefits, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, recommendation number 6 is that in the next budget cycle, that is for the financial year 2024-2025, the National Treasury should submit explanatory notes on the CFS expenditures along with the budget estimates for the financial year 2024-2025. Honorable Speaker, explanatory notes are very important when we are analyzing budgets, and they provide more details than you can see in the figures. So it is important that as move to the future, the National Treasury, every item submitted to the National Assembly is accompanied by explanatory notes. Recommendation number 7, Honorable Speaker, that by that 1st December 2023, this year, the Office of the Auditor General should undertake a special audit on pensions relating to pensioners paid through the Crown Agents, Honorable Speaker, bank in the UK, and submit a report of the National Assembly within the stipulated time frame. Honorable Speaker, the committee did realize that as a result of this committee starting to be very keen on CFS expenditures, the allocation for this particular group of Kenyans, retirees who are in the UK, was reduced from 150 million to 42 million. Is it a million, Honorable Speaker? And we were not sure what really happened. So that's why we are asking the Controller and Auditor General to go out there and do a specific audit on this matter, so that as a committee, we are informed of what really happened and what triggered that change. And in case there will be any issue of misappropriation or misdirection of resources, Honorable Speaker, we will be asking this House to recommend the necessary sanctions for such a case, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, Honorable Speaker, I just want to repeat what I said earlier. I re-emphasize, Honorable Speaker, that these CFS expenditures, Honorable Members, are taking a huge percentage of our budgets. And it is important that we start paying more attention to them as opposed to what is happening now. And we'll be pleading with the House, and more so our Speaker, that this now is given more time and we discuss them during the right time, Honorable Speaker, instead of discussing them when we have passed the budget. So with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to take this opportunity now. I beg to move this motion and call upon one of my very active members, Honorable Speaker, very serious legislator, a first-time legislator, but very serious. And I must thank the people of Wajir East for electing him as their representative, Honorable Aden Daouti, to second this motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Daoud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my chair for recognizing me and allowing me to second this very important motion. Honorable Speaker, I beg to second. I will start with the alarm bells that our chair has just rung. This financial year of 2023-2024, the CFS expenditure will be at 1.84 trillion. Honorable Speaker, will you ask the members who are consulting loudly to
proceed? The members are not that loud. Just proceed. Order, members. Honorable Junet and team.
Yeah.
Honorable Junet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me start with saying that the alarm bells that has just been rung by our chair regarding the CFX expenditures. It is important for this House to note that in the year 2023-2024, the CFX expenditure, the CFS, the Consolidated Fund Services expenditure, will be 1.84 trillion. That is a huge number. That is about 51% of our national budget. That figure, Honorable Speaker, does not come through this House. I remember in the last few weeks, we have been staying here overnight, every night until midnight, just to argue about $200 billion that was addition to the finance bill. But here we are, very lackluster, and we are not even minding an expenditure of 1.84 trillion. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker, by the year 2027, as was already said, this figure will balloon to 2.2 trillion. Unless this House does something, unless this country does something about that kind of expenditure, then we are going into a financial mayhem. I suggest that we go into financial consolidation and financial discipline. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fiscal deficit limit is targeted to be 4.4% of our GDP. I want to remind this House, we just recently debated the debt anchor, and we pegged it at 55% of our GDP, the debt to GDP, 55% debt to GDP at present value. Mr. Speaker, sir, it behoves us as a House to hold the National Treasury to account and to make sure that our fiscal deficit limit should not be more than 4.4% of our GDP. And going forward to the year 2027, our fiscal deficit to be reduced to 3% of our GDP. This is in line with what we have just done the other day by moving from a debt ceiling to a debt anchor of 55%. We have given the National Treasury 5 years to comply with this 55% debt anchor. Mr. Speaker, sir, our public debt stock, Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering why I'm seconding and my thing is at yellow already. This is a very important thing. It's not.
Honorable member, you have 5 minutes. Proceed.
Okay. I am getting concerned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our debt, the national debt has gone to 10 trillion. Out of that 10 trillion, Mr. Speaker, it is very important that this House finds out the intergenerational equity of these loans that we are taking. Mr. Speaker, every time we hear the executive has signed this and that loan, and we don't know where those loans are going, and it is important that as a House, we must follow the dictates of our Constitution and make sure that the debts, the loans we are taking, that the both intergenerational equity and geographical equity is followed. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have my chair has already talked about the 50-50 MTDS, 50% domestic, 50% external. This House has passed that report. Unfortunately, a few days later, we passed another report, the budget policy statement of 80-20. I think it is important that this House takes note of these reports that we are passing. Today we pass X, tomorrow we pass Y, and they are contradicting each other. Mr. Speaker, sir, I urge that the House takes notes of these very important reports and just don't say aye and nays. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we have gone from a defined benefits contribution, defined benefit scheme to a defined contribution scheme as far as our public pensions are concerned. Unfortunately, the idea of moving from defined benefits to defined contribution was to reduce the pension burden on the public. But as already said, the pension burden is increasing, and it is important that this House follows up on that and makes sure that the public servant superannuation scheme is fully funded and for the benefit of the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second.
Very well. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee on its consideration of the Consolidated Fund Service expenditures under the financial year 2023-2024 budget estimates laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 21st June 2023. The first person to take a bite on this one is Honorable Beatrice Elachi. Thank you. Every member will have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Proceed, Honorable Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I want to really thank the committee indeed for giving us a very elaborated report on our debt in this country, but also to thank the chair for just taking us through, especially in the figures, to understand, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at the recommendations of the committee, you realize and appreciate what Parliament did through our standing orders to ensure we have this Committee of Public Debt that can work very closely with the Committee of Budget and Finance, and we are able to resolve now the challenges we completely face in this country when we speak on how we deal with our finances and how do we work indeed to see that we have reduced debt in this country. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the recommendations of indeed the current expenditure that we have, that we indeed spend 70% of what we collect. It is something we need to look at. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, the problem is not the money, Mr. Speaker. In this country, our problem is how we implement the resources we've collected. And I'll give you an example right now, Mr. Speaker. You realize all the counties have been paid their monies. Everyone, I think, every institution now has resources that you are able to pay your pending bills and now to come out of the same debt we are talking about, so that we ask ourselves now going forward and looking at how counties like Mombasa are now performing, that they are able to tell us now they have good revenue. It means these other counties can collect revenue that can help. But Mr. Speaker, as a country, we need to have a conversation on Kenya Airways. You cannot pay 16 billion. Then in the year 2023-2024, we are about to pay 17 billion. And I think the airline now, we need to ask ourselves, is it the management that is a problem? Because the monies we put in and the rates they give us, you find you feel very distressed when you are paying a ticket to Kenya Airways. Because number one, you'll wonder, why is it that we are so expensive with our airline? And that in terms of hospitality, I think they have improved. There, I'll give them a plus, Mr. Speaker. But in terms of rates, in terms of how they charge their tickets, it is still something we need to ask. And you find the local domestic airlines are doing very well, Mr. Speaker. So it is something, even as we give in the money, it is time now Treasury should bring out and tell us, government shares are this, the other shares are this, and who are these others that this airline cannot awaken itself the way Ethiopian and all these airlines are performing in our country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is something this House has to follow through and ask ourselves, how do we heal from this institution that we just keep on giving money and it is always in debt and in crisis? The other thing, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of pensions. As you know, you've been a teacher, our mothers are teachers, wherever they are old. And indeed, after you have gone home, if you cannot receive your pension, Mr. Speaker, it is something that you find people really, really going into a lot of suffering, and especially those who are sick, who are using the same money to go for treatment. And so we have to also be very clear, even as we deal with this institution in London, it is time we ask ourselves, after this year, do we close this pension of Europe so that we ensure that the monies we are talking about are clear? Finally, Mr. Speaker, it is time as a country we accept and say we need to support the government, support the president on this issue of debts. It is a must, we have to do it, and therefore I call upon all the counties. You have received your money, kindly pay the pending bills to your suppliers so that we can see circulation of the same money, and then people will start feeling that indeed they have a right to pay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Thuku Kwenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support this our report on expenditure on the Consolidated Fund Service. And Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I would wish to state that we as a committee, in sometimes back passed a report in this House, MTDS for that matter, medium-term debt strategy. And Mr. Speaker, Treasury had proposed the kind of borrowing mix or debt mix in the short run, or in the financial year 2023-24. And Mr. Speaker, for record, that report, as much as it was passed in this House, is not reflective of what Treasury presented to us later. Because later they came to our committee with different figures. And Mr. Speaker, why I'm saying this is because debt mix is a very important aspect, especially to investors, because this informs decision as to how they are going to invest their money, especially those who invest in liquidity. Mr. Speaker, a debt mix of 80 to 20, a departure from what was proposed 50-50, then it means that investors must reorganize their investments, because an increase having debt borrowed domestically at high level to the extent of 80% of our total debt, then it means that the interest rates are going to be higher locally. Maybe our investors had forecast a situation whereby they would invest elsewhere or invest locally, but now because of this back and forth, their programs are interrupted. And therefore, as a representative of the people, Mr. Speaker, I feel that the Treasury should in the future now stick by what they present before this House. And as it is, Mr. Speaker, you know, this House does not act in vain. And therefore, when we pass reports and then Treasury presents different figures within a short time, then it makes really, allow me to use this word, makes nonsense of the work that we are doing as a House, Mr. Speaker. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we noticed, because pensions are paid from CFS, we noticed that most of employers, as much as they deduct their employees' monies, they do not submit the same monies in good time. And therefore, that becomes another challenge. Mr. Speaker, we also realized that there are some pensions that have been paid for a long time by the Treasury to workers who are retired during Africanization in 1963, when there was a declaration that now Africans should now manage their affairs. And therefore, most of the workers who were not of who never came from Africa, who went back to their countries, have been enjoying pension for quite a long time, because it was a provision as at that time. And Mr. Speaker, you realize that the monies that have been paid were being paid through an agent called Crown Agent. And up to date, the monies are still being paid. And of course, if you calculate from 1963 to date, we are talking of more than 60 years, almost 60 years, yes. I pose this question to the House maybe for them to consider. For instance, if someone was working, at that time was working, and was about 30 years, 60 years later, then it means that they are 90 years old and above. And Mr. Speaker, these people are still enjoying taxpayers' money through Crown Agent. And Mr. Speaker, when we brought this matter to the fore, Treasury came back to us with different figures, stating that now it is not 150 million that we're paying, we are paying 42 million. Mr. Speaker, we need to put an eye on expenditures that are of CFS in nature that are provided for in the Constitution, so that then this CFS is not abused. And I want to thank the President, because he's been firm as to fighting corruption. Because if, honestly, we are to interrogate this matter, then we can see how much money we are losing. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this report and state that, Mr. Speaker, we need to put some weight and allow us as members to ventilate on reports like this when they are tabled in the House, even for purposes of record, because this is a House of record. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this report of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee on Consolidated Fund Service Expenditure and the financial year 2023-2024 budget estimates. And let me also start by echoing the statement of the Vice Chair that probably this is the wrong time to have brought this report here. It ought to have preceded the budget estimates as well as the finance bill, because you can only decide how much to borrow or how much to raise if you know your total liabilities. Honorable Speaker, consolidated fund services are established pursuant to our Constitution, and it covers debt and payment of some important commissions, specifically the President and Deputy President, under Article 151. Honorable Speaker, in the wisdom of this House, towards the end of the last Parliament, we created this committee to specifically focus on the issue of public debt, because this has been a sore issue, a mostly debated issue in this country. Many times during political campaigns, we use this as a campaign tool, but once we get elected into office, we renegade and go back to our old ways. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the report of the Auditor General, the submission of the Auditor General, they note with apprehension that the amount of public debt has been increasing substantially since 2018 from 4.8 trillion to about close to 10 trillion. And many times we have always asked, during that time, Honorable Speaker, a GDP growth rate has been subdued. That simply meaning debt has not been used in the productive sector, has been used for other things that really do not make sense on us, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the most alarming part, and I hope the member of the committee is here, is the disproportionate allocation between servicing foreign debt and servicing domestic debt. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the figures, we are talking about 1.3 trillion goes to service local debt. And yet about 600 billion is what goes probably to service foreign debt. Honorable Speaker, in a country with very low saving levels, in a country with a very small financial market, honestly speaking, Honorable Speaker, excessive borrowing from domestic market is going to stifle, is going to kill this economy, and it's going to rob the local business people money to enable them invest in productive ventures. And I totally agree, and probably to some extent I disagree, that there should be a 50-50% share arrangement between domestic and foreign debt. What we should go for, and the central bank made a comment during their commitment, and they were very clear, that the CBK knows under paragraph 19 of the report, that the CBK knows that the capacity of domestic market to support the elevated financing needs is limited. That is a very clear sign. And Honorable Speaker, we are aware, every week or every month, CBK releases reports on uptake of Treasury bill and other related bonds. If you track the reports and you plot, you will find that the appetite has been reducing. Many times, central bank or the government has got fewer applications and fewer uptakes compared to what's being floated. That we should tell you, Honorable Speaker, there is a liquidity problem in this country. And as we have always argued, in an economy that's in a recession, in a market where liquidity is stressed, the government should not compete with the private sector. Because the government, being a sovereign, is a less risk lender or a risk borrower compared to a normal business. So in that event, Honorable Speaker, this economy will continue to struggle simply because those people who are in charge of making these decisions have simply forgotten the basic economic theories, basic macroeconomic theories that were normally taught in first year in any reasonable university, especially a reasonable university like the University of Nairobi. I wonder where these people went to university.
Well spoken, except for your last remarks on universities. All these universities are great universities training our students. Now, the next to speak on this is the Honorable KJ. I saw your name here. Did you want to speak on this? Then let's have the Honorable Silvana Osoro. You have keyed in. Proceed and speak on this. And economists have not seen yourself key in, and you keep. Honorable Soro, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Sorry, I am. Members of Parliament are engaged in different matters, and I'm now handling constituency matters and, blend with my official duty here in the House. Honorable Speaker, I have gone through the report by the Public Debt and Privatization Committee. And for me, of much interest is the recommendations as done or proposed by different offices, independent offices, as far as this matter, public debt is concerned. Honorable Speaker, we are not really doing very well as a country, and this really we must accept. And going by the report by this committee, you'll accept that the committee has really done a good job in compiling, our state as we are and coming up with recommendations, as I've said, proposed from these very independent offices. Honorable Speaker, when I look at the proposals by the Auditor General and the observation by the Auditor General in the report, the control of budget, you'll notice, Honorable Speaker, that out of the 100 shillings, and this is, as the report says, that out of the 100 shillings that we collect, 100 shillings as revenue, 49 or 47.9%, is used to service debt. So ideally, we are left with about 52% to cater for everything, to do the matters healthcare, to do matters education, to do matters roads, to do every service that is required in this country. That is not really a very good report. It's not really something very interesting to have as a country. But apparently, that year in, year out, we find ourselves in this situation that we'll always find ourselves paying, servicing loans year in, year out, because we are not really living within our means. And really, that is a challenge. And much of these challenges are brought forth by our own making. There is a lot of wastage within government structures and operations. And at times, they are very unnecessary. And if every office and every sector, every operation, every state department can be able to check on how they spend their money, we'll be able to save a lot of money and we'll not really find ourselves servicing things that are unnecessary. And those are the things that I have noticed in this report, that as a country, we are not doing very well, and we need to now empower these independent officers that even as they make proposals, professional proposals, that will be able to mitigate the challenge of, the challenge of this public debt. If we are able to keenly follow what the Auditor General says, if we are able to keenly follow what the Control of Budget Office, because those are experts, advisors, then we will be able to mitigate these challenges. Because sometimes people in offices, they take advantage of a bit of some spaces within the law or provisions in the law and misuse the CFS. And at times, we find ourselves in a situation that we really can't explain because people have misused this whole thing. And this wastage is not just in the national grid, it's also in the county levels. If today you ask members of parliament here to, although at times when we raise such issues, Honorable Speaker, we are told to do our work and avoid talking about matters of county governments. But the wastage that we see in governments, national and county governments, it's not really something to smile about. And that is why today you can walk in the streets of your constituency and identify a project that has been pushed through the influence or through the network of a member of parliament or the patronage of the member of parliament, but you can hardly see anything that is being done by the county governments because of a lot of wastages that you will notice. That what you see in the national grid, you will also see a governor moving around with about 50 or 13 or whatever vehicles, one carrying the carpet, another one carrying the tent, another one carrying the PA, another one carrying these. You see another one carrying the seat. And in a single day, what I noticed, they call the governor's office. You find a governor spending about...
Okay, add the whip 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. You'll find a governor in basic recurrent expenditure, what they call the governor's expense. You find them spending about 2 million, and they do such activities day in, day out. You'll realize that their ECD classes are not built. You realize that the roads are not well maintained, but you find that these guys are spending a lot of money, and then they carry them with them a whole team. In fact, today, Honorable Speaker, without really casting aspersions to anybody, particularly when I talk about, for example, my county, as we speak, My county governor is in China with 50 MCAs, with 30 county staffs, all of them, he's taken them to China. All of them, you know, they are going there to benchmark on how to plant bananas. But Kisii is a hub of bananas. They are spending, when I was going through through that vote in the county government, they spent a whooping 300 million just to go there and see how bananas are being planted in China. It is shocking. I mean, that is the situation we are in. But you'll see them here saying, county governments have not been given money.
Honorable Soro, don't discuss a person who's not in the House, but proceed.
Okay. You will see them. I'm talking about oversight, Honorable Speaker. You will realize the county governments here, you will hear them every time saying, we are not adequately funded, we've not been given money, national government has refused to give us money. Immediately that money hits the account, it is spent in unnecessary trips, spent in unnecessary expenses, you know, like moving around with motorcades and such like that, sirens disturbing people in small towns. You know, it's really unfortunate. And that now raises our public debt. We find ourselves now in a situation that we are funding unnecessary expenses. We are finding a bit of some, for lack of a better word, Honorable Speaker, we find ourselves funding nonsensicals in government structures. Thank you very much. And for that reason, though, I support the report as it is. Thank you, sir.
Very well, but mind your language. Strictly be parliamentary language we require here. Very well, let's have next to speak on this the Honorable David Mboni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And let me caution members not to to speak and talk about people who are not in the House and they can't defend themselves. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to say one or two things about consolidated fund services, expenditure services. Mr. Speaker, as we are all aware, CFS expenditures are the first charge in Exchequer. And the comprise public debt service, pensions, salaries to orders of constitutional offices, and guaranteed debt. Mr. Speaker, this report is one of the best reports I've ever come across because it gives us our fiscal situation in the country. And when you look at the fiscal situation, it's really very worrying. Because if you look at the public debt, for example, servicing, out of the 3.6 trillion budget, public service debt is taking 1.6 trillion, which is almost 40% of our budget. Mr. Speaker, we need really to think about how we are going to address our debts. Because if you are spending 1.6 trillion on debt, and then on development, we are only spending around 6 billion. So that's a quite worrying situation whereby if we continue like this country cannot be able to develop. Mr. Speaker, we recently moved our debt from numerical debt ceiling to debt anchor. But currently, our debt to GDP at present value is 2%. And I come to understand also the numerical value of our debt has already passed 10 trillion. This gives us a very worrying situation because we don't have fiscal space even to borrow. So we need to take, as a country, measures to make sure that the country moves forward. And one of the things is the government should follow strictly the funding strategy, which has been approved by this government, this House, which talks about 50 to 50% of external debt, external domestic to external borrowing, so that at least we reduce borrowing. Because what is killing this country is borrowing. Secondly, we need to strictly follow consolidation strategy, strictly. Because this thing of consolidation, fiscal consolidation, we have been talking about it. But when you look at what is happening in this country, in terms of wastage, was what Honorable Osoro was talking about. wastage in this country and the corruption actually takes around 60% of our expenditures, meaning that if we can reduce our corruption and wastage, this country will be able to move. Actually, if we reduce by even 50%, we are going to save enough money for development. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we need to move from expensive loans. The expensive loans which have been taken from East, we need to move to concessionary loans, which are cheaper and have a long repayment period, and use those loans and retire the most expensive loans, so that at least we have fiscal space and we can breathe, we can invest in our development. Mr. Speaker, I like the recommendation which they said that committee put forward. Fiscal deficit should remain at 4.4% of our GDP. These are very good recommendations, so that we don't need to continue borrowing. But I wonder if Treasury and the government are going really to follow that, because we are fond of spending even outside the approved budget. For example, the Article 223. These are something which as a parliament, we need to look at Article 223 and agree what should be going into Article 223. Because at the end of the day, we are spending over 300 billion on Article 223, funds which are not actually budgeted for. On the issue of domestic borrowing, I think these are issues which you need to address. If we continue borrowing from domestic, we are going to crowd out
Well spoken. Next to speak on this is Honorable Ridikiri Mugambi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First, I want to thank the committee led by my friend, Dr. Makali. Indeed, this committee has already indicated to us that they are ready to support the government in putting up the right structures in place to ensure that there is prudent management of finance resources that we have. Mr. Speaker, I've listened keenly to the recommendations that they have given. The only thing is that they should have presented a roadmap before even we entered the budget-making process, because I think they would have clearly spoken to us in this House on the expectations and how they expect in terms of financial resource management, particularly under consolidated fund services. However, they have brought it very clearly that there are certain things that the government need to do. And that's one of the reasons as to where I've listened to support this, this report. Mr. Speaker, we are all speaking on scarcity of finances in this country. So when we see wasted, channeling resources on the long usage, channeling resources in sectors or institutions that we know they have a chronic behavior of failure, I think we'll not be doing good as a country. And I'm picking this, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, on this chronic support of KQ, where we have never gotten an answer as to why they are poorly performing. But let me say, I had the privilege of being in the Transport Committee in the last Parliament before we are checked out. My last engagement with KQ is during the PIIP proposal. Mr. Chairman, the problem of KQ and the bailout year in, year out, and we have other few institutions we can quote, including Mumias. But at least it's better Mumias because you can see they are producing something. But KQ management, I've never been able to come out and say this is what is here in KQ. I know the pilots of Kenya presented a proposal on how they see. And I saw a few days ago, Mr. Speaker, the same KQ saying they are adopting this proposal. How I wish that they can realize for all this time the problem of performance of KQ is related to management managing the resources of KQ. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of pensions. I want to thank this committee because we are brothers and sisters out there who have performed and worked for this country for many years. You have put your 50 years of service to this nation. But it takes you another 20 years to get your small pension when you retire. Mr. Speaker, I think this committee, I will ask them to continue pressurizing until they put the right systems in place. And we have to say a certain amount must be set aside and it must be executed and given out clearly during the financial year. The other factor, Mr. Speaker, is this issue of Treasury and National Assembly working differently. That is a very serious assumption. And I think we cannot lead this country like that. When one arm of the government is saying this, the other one is saying this, and we are expecting to really continue. I am part of the government, but really for Treasury to continue giving out different figures from the national world.
Senior, you have had your bite. The list is slightly longer here. Next to speak on this is Honorable Abdulkadir Mohammed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this debate on the CFS, Consolidated Fund Service. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we do not know how much is our debt. Every government institution that's concerned, non-state actors, each one have its own figures. And we need to know how much debt, how much is our debt. And the only way we can know is to do forensic audit on public debt. And the other question is pending bills part of public debt? Because we have pending bills for the last some of them are pending for the last 3, 4, 5 years, unpaid. And some of them, I'm sure, will attract, if it was a court to adjudicate that, it will have attracted some interest. So I think we should also ask ourselves, is pending bills part of the public debt? Mr. Speaker, we need to scrutinize and do forensic audit on our public debt so that we can exactly know how much is our debt. The other issue is, Mr. Speaker, we have debt loans that we cannot link to any project. I think the Auditor General is doing something about that. But as an institution, who borrowed these loans? When were they borrowed for? And what were they borrowed for? We need to know. Another issue is, Mr. Speaker, the other issue is that we have, I think part of our debt also is about 1.1 trillion, which is undisbursed. And these undisbursed loans is still part of our debt. Some of them we have still paying for them. Some of them we have paid, I think, what they call some fees. I think it is called certain fees, your commitment fees. About, I think, 600-something million commitment fees. And they're still somewhere. You have not been given to us. You are not using it. It's also a part of our public debt. So I think the Minister of Finance should tell us where this money is and and why is it not disbursed? Once it is committed, it's our money. 1.1 trillion is a lot of money. That have solved a lot of problems for us. Also, Mr. Speaker, The only way we can go out of this quagmire, economic quagmire, is to raise more, I think is to have more revenue. And the only way we can raise revenue, I think, is to tax Kenyans, which is very painful. The options are you either take loans or you raise revenue through taxes. But if we may ask ourselves, which one is better? I think the loans are worse. Because the loans you pay with interest. Right now, 75% of the interest we are paying for loans is domestic loans. And these domestic loans is, I think those are the easiest money that government can get. Whenever they want to raise something, they raise bonds. So I think what we should do as a government is that we should look into, when we are borrowing, this just borrowing money for nothing. Or okay, we have a problem with money, cash. But if we always go for loans or we go for debt, I think it is going to be a problem for us. So I think I will ask Kenyans, let us tighten our belt. The taxes already are there. We have raised the taxes. But I think within 3 years, this will also, the taxes that the taxes we are paying now will also somehow help us in the next few years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Augustine Mwafrika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I need also to top up my voice on this motion. Mr. Speaker, borrowing has a remit, whether multilateral or bilateral. I'm saying this because, Mr. Speaker, our borrowing has hit the roof, the borrowing of this country. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza government came up with a finance bill so that somehow we can become self-reliant. That is a move which has been taken by the government to make sure that we apply some brakes in borrowing. We try to reduce borrowing by paying taxes. Mr. Speaker, we have a belief that any business which is not performing is supposed to be closed. An example has been given of the Kenya Airways, Mr. Speaker. 16 billion, and now 2023-2024, 17 billion is to be injected. We have never been given the accounts of how much Kenya Q makes, because it can't happen that Kenya Airways is operational and they make nothing. Let me remind this House about the uchumi. In the year 2003, during the former President Kibaki, God rest his soul in peace, government injected 600 million to Uchumi supermarket. Afterwards, the government injected more money to Uchumi, but still, the Uchumi continued to perform poorly, and they did not make it despite the support by the government. After a short while, Uchumi went under. After all that support by the government. So, Mr. Speaker, it has come a time when this country needs to be managed like business, where government is making losses. We try to make sure that that whole of making losses is stopped, because we cannot be making more losses than our revenues. as that report, a very well compiled report, shows that our expenditures are more than our revenues. If you put on top, if you add on top about the losses and also the corruption, then you find this, you force this country to go in the spree of borrowing. Time has come when we have to pay taxes so that we can stop borrowing. The finance bill, Mr. Speaker, was opposed by the minority. And I'm happy when I hear this report about how we can stop borrowing. 10 million is a big debt for this country. And this country is a developing country, Mr. Speaker. So I support the report, and I request the government to make sure that all areas which are operated by government, which are making losses, are supposed to be closed. Whether it is KQ, we cannot continue injecting more billions to make sure that, or to enable KQ to continue making losses. Mr. Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Amos Mwago, MP Starehe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me an opportunity to speak on this matter about the report on CFS. I start by submitting that I support the report because it's time now we have this discussion as a country about the issue of debt, about the borrowing done by the government. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand and I would like to say that we seem to be lazy to think that an economy can only be driven by only through two ways. It is either we borrow or we tax our people. As a government, I think you are being too lazy in our thinking because you cannot have those two models as the choices to drive our economy. An economy can be driven through other models, through production, consumption, investments, and savings. So it is time for us as a government to look for other creative ways on how to improve our economy, but not necessarily taxing our people and not necessarily having to borrow. The Minister for Trade, Mr. Moses Kuria, is on record saying that our produce, 80% of our produce, is lost on the farms because it is always harvested when it's overripe and it's not fit for export. We have not exhausted all the export markets for our local produce. When we turn to taxing our people as the only way to raise revenue, I can tell you for sure, Mr. Speaker, sir, that's a very soon end way of killing our economy. When you say the majority of our budget is to service loans and debts, we all know the habit of borrowing is a very bad habit that can never stop. So it's time we cap our public debt at a certain level, and then we adopt other ways of improving our economy. For example, if we speak to the several MDAs that we oversight as committees and the several sagas that we oversight, you tend to notice the recurrent expenditure is always 3 times the capital expenditure. You find an MDA having a recurrent budget of 1 billion, but a capital budget of around 20 or 50 million. So you're left to wonder, we are spending so much money in order to move or to develop. The development expenditure is so small. There's so many people trying to run that. So we have a problem with the way things are done, with the way that these finances, as much as we are borrowing them, where they go to. The other issue is we have very qualified economists in this country who should be put on the table to solicit for cheaper loans. We are borrowing on the high, and at the end of the day, this will catch up with us. Because we've seen other republics what have happened. The people who've lent the money have come over and taken over institutions that are very serious. Like some other places, the ports have been taken, the airports have been taken by these foreigners who are lending us money. So it's just a matter of time before even us as Kenyans, we are caught in the mix. I would also like to speak to the issue of the expenditure of these loans. That's a very, very challenging part, and that's why we seem to lose it. Because, as Mr. Osoro has put it, the expenditures that are being done by various government institutions are not even in tandem with the economy. People are living beyond their means through government money, and this money we are borrowing it heavily, and then the government of the day has chosen to go to borrow in the domestic borrowing way. This is a very big challenge for us as a country, because with the passing of the finance bill, there are a lot of taxes that have been put on Kenyans. Then if you go to compete with Kenyans for accessibility of cheap loans in these banks will always go for the government because the government has a higher collateral. Business people will not be able to access those loans. Currently, they have increased their rates, and it's becoming very expensive to get loans. Where are we going to get this tax from if we kill the businesses that are supposed to pay the taxes? It's a time as a country we have this discussion so that we can have a very clear way forward on how we are going to tackle the issue of public debt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I submit.
The Honorable John Waweru, you are back on the screen. Are you now ready? Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity. And I was taking time to internalize this very important report. And Mr. Speaker, I must start by commending this committee. I must commend the chairman too, Mr. Speaker. And we now as a House see the reason behind the wisdom of the 12th Parliament to institute the Public Debt and Privatization Committee. And I must say, for this first report, this committee is already doing a brilliant job. Mr. Speaker, public debt is a real issue in this country. So real an issue that for the first time in Kenya, our repayments of international obligations is surpassing the 1 trillion mark, Mr. Speaker. And this 1 trillion mark, Mr. Speaker, is becoming an alarm bell that this country must wake up to. Because international obligations and debt are things that you have very little control over. You do not have control over the fluctuation of international currencies. You do not have control over the rules and stipulations that will be put by the lender, and hence the reason why this parliament must apply itself through the Committee of Public Debt and Privatization to be on top of matters on what this country is borrowing. Mr. Speaker, there's been a number of calamities that we have experienced in the past. One such calamity is this country going for extremely expensive debts, Mr. Speaker. And expensive debts are at times a sign of corruption because affordable debts are available at good interest rates, but because people want to make personal benefit out of what they're borrowing for the country, some choose to go for these extremely expensive debts that become an impossibility to pay, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I would like to support this report in its entirety. One thing in this report that really excites me is the fact that this committee is recommending that we get quarterly reports on debt in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I spent, I think, 4 years, every finance bill and every budget cycle, trying to demand that this House gets the right debt register that we have currently as a country. Because, Mr. Speaker, when it came to the issue of raising the debt ceiling, even this House was at a loss to tell the country how much this country owes. Because this House has not been furnished with the reports on how this country is borrowing, how our registers looks, and what nature of debts we have taken in terms of which ones are international, which ones are local, which ones are foreign, which ones are domestic, which ones are concessional, which ones are conditional, and so forth, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the fact that this committee is taking upon itself to require Treasury to report to this House is one of the reasons that I support this report. Mr. Speaker, there is a recommendation by this committee that in line with the House resolutions on the medium-term debt management strategy of 2023, financial year 2023-2024, the National Treasury should adhere to the approved 50-50 mix of domestic to external borrowing, and any deviation in the funding strategy should be approved by the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, on that one count alone, this committee is starting to speak to the issues why this House demanded for us to have a debt and a debt committee. Mr. Speaker, a matter has been raised here on the issue of counties and the misappropriations of monies for the monies that we send there through the county appropriations bill. Mr. Speaker, this is a radical recommendation, but I do believe that this country cannot continue sending monies to counties in the form that we are sending them, with the executives in the counties having the responsibility to spend as they will. Mr. Speaker, my radical recommendation is that even the monies that go to counties must be transformed to be conditional debts, conditional grants. Mr. Speaker, the reason why CDF performs so well is because if you...
Please give him 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your magnanimity. And the final point I wanted to make is that one of the reasons why CDF is such an effective fund on the ground is because, one, being a conditional grant, if money is allocated from the center to go and build a toilet in Kirigo Primary School, even the board, the committee in the constituency, even the school itself, even the user cannot change the use of that monies because it is a conditional grant assigned to a particular project, and that can never be changed. Mr. Speaker, if we made the monies we send to counties conditional grants, we would see counties registering development projects in a way that we have never seen before, just like CDF does. The second reason why CDF does so well is because the administrative costs on CDF are very little. Being a conditional grant that is administered from a national board, it means that there is only a small committee sitting at the constituency, very lean staff on the national board, and since we do not end up with a situation, what we are seeing in counties, where a county allocates 330 million to recurrent expenditure and 0 to development. Mr. Speaker, it means that we have 47 governments that are doing nothing else but paying salaries. And as a result, we end up, Mr. Speaker, with the only visible projects out there, the projects done by CDF, a conditional grant, while the billions and billions of shillings that go to the counties end up only paying salaries and nothing else. Mr. Speaker, I support this report fully, and I thank you for the opportunity and the magnanimity to give me the opportunity to contribute to this. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Jessica Mbalo, very elegantly dressed. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me to say that I want to congratulate the committee, that is a committee on public debt and privatization, and want to be on record that in the 12th Parliament, as the Honorable Kiara said, we went ahead to ensure that this committee is in place, and we want to appreciate the work that has been done. Honorable Speaker, the mover of the report, Honorable Makali Mulu, is an economist. And being the chair and part of the committee, I can imagine the kind of work that is being done in the report. I've gone through the report, Honorable Speaker, and I can tell you the consolidated fund service expenditure, of course, under the financial year 2023-2024 budget estimate, which was laid on the table of the House on the Wednesday, 21st June 2023, has been well prepared. This is a report which I'm holding Mr. Speaker, and coming from and presented by the Honorable Makali Mulu, I can tell the House and the country that is a report that has been well looked at, and a lot of, public participation, a lot of consolidation of information and education in terms of economy, saying that Makali Mulu and economists, this is a report that we should all support. Again, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support the reports. I must be on record supporting the reports, having looked at it, and especially the recommendations that the committee has come up with. Mr. Speaker, very important that in line with the House resolutions, the medium-term debt, as part of the recommendation of the committee, Strategy 2023, the committee has come up with a report and to say, I recommend that in financial year 2023-2024, the National Treasury, very important, should adhere to the approved 50-50 mix of domestic to external borrowing, and any deviation to the funding strategy should be approved by this House, and this is the National Assembly. This is a very powerful House, the National Assembly, and so this recommendation, I really welcome it, Mr. Speaker. I was with you, Mr. Speaker, in the 12th Parliament, and you know what this one means, Mr. Speaker. The other recommendation that I would want to approve is that in 15 days, that the committee is recommending, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of each quarter in each financial year, a report should be given of the CFS, should be given indicating the actual expenditures compared to the budgeted expenditure. Mr. Speaker, we were here last week and the other week talking about the finance bill, which I'm on record that I voted a no because of the amount of taxation we are putting to our people. It's really frustrating our people, my constituents. This is my third term in this parliament. And I can tell how to lead people, and they are being overtaxed. How difficult it is, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we must balance between borrowing and taxing. That one we do admit. And I can tell you my first degree is in finance, my master's in strategic management, and my PhD, which I'm almost completing. Let me not go there. But being in finance, Mr. Speaker, I must say also and appreciate, and I'm sure Mr. Osoro here is appreciating the same as we support the report, that by 31st December 2023, and this is a recommendation, Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General should undertake a special audit on pensions. We have a lot of pensions that have not been paid to our people, relating to pensioners through the crown agents. That's a recommendation. And congratulations again to the committee for this. And now we are saying with the implementation committee in this House, this must be implemented, and we must see the fruits of this House. For the first time, I'm sure this side and the other side, and Osoro did support this bill. I mean, this...
Okay, give her 1 minute.
Thank you. I did to you when I was a speaker. Of course, I used to add you 2 minutes. The other recommendation is that for any CFS expenditure adjustments, that the budget cycles going forward, the National Treasury, Mr. Speaker, should report the overdraft facility, as well as the expenditure-related guaranteed debt, the separate and substance components to public servicing expenditures, and not under the salaries and allowances component of the CFS. Mr. Speaker, I think these recommendations, if implemented, our people, our pensioners, the people we are supposed to pay pension, the teachers, and every other person who should be a benefit of the pension, will be able to benefit. So, again, allow me to thank the committee, congratulate the Honorable Makali Mulu, with your committee for coming up with this report. I support.
The Honorable Fatuma Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I must state for the purpose of record that I support this bill. Kenya has a tendency of having syndicate loans. They are not just normal loans. And this is a tendency for a very long time. At the moment now, we have a budget deficit of 720 billion. And the question is, where are we going to get this money? And the answer is simple: we are going to take a loan. And we have become a country that is laughed at. When we go outside the country and you meet fellow African sisters and brothers, and they ask you, oh, what is your population? And you have a time to chat. And they say, what is your budget? That is the next question. And then they ask you, oh, where are you going to get the money? If a white man is seated next to you, because I've experienced that, the white man said, they'll come and beg us to help them. And I felt ashamed, because Africa, and even Kenya as a country, we are a rich country. We have resources. We can get our money locally. But we have a tendency of borrowing, and not borrowing to help, but borrowing to put it in our pockets. If you look at the situation now, the president runs with I don't know how many cars. It will take you an hour for his motorcade to pass you. The next, the governor passes with his flag, another motorcade. And the tendency is bad for us. We are hungry. We are looking for food. The fuel has gone up, but they can manage to fuel these cars that they go around with. If you go to the white men country who happen to be richer than us, and they have nothing in their country, everything they have they get from Africa, including Kenya. They are getting copper from us. In my constituency, Nyatike constituency, Chinese, Indians are there taking copper back to their country. When you go there, the president will pass with one car and an extra car, if not a border, passing as his security. But you come to Kenya, the poor country, with overloaded debts, a governor, a president, passes with all those motorcades, and you wonder where they're going to. But I want to remind them, there's an equalizer. That equalizer is death. When you die, you will leave those cars. When you die, you will go to your God. And God will have one question for you. I gave you an opportunity to live in your country and lead your country.
Proceed,
I'm speaking out of reality, and don't be scared of death. Me as a Muslim, I'm not scared.
Honorable Speaker, I just want to, I don't know, is it in order for Honorable Fatuma to impose threats and blackmail while passing a very important message, that the only equalizer is death? I mean, can't this House mitigate such challenges without really death? Must we die for us to save people from the public death? I mean...
sorry if that touched your heart, but I want to remind you again that you are a candidate for death. All of us will die. And I'm reminding you, as a Muslim, I am not scared of death. I'm scared of the day of judgment. And that is why it's my responsibility as a Muslim sister. My book tells me that always remind your brother and sister when they are wrong, because the day of judgment, I will be next to you and I will be asked, you as a member of parliament, you saw your president, you saw your governor, you saw your minister going around with all these cars and people were dying of hunger. What did you do? What answer will I have in front of my creator? The answer will be, I spoke and it is on record. And the devil will say, surely I am a witness. And the angels will say, our sister spoke and she spoke the truth. Dear Kenyans, let us tell our leaders this is too much on us. In 6 months, since this government was elected, they overseeded their debts by 17.4 billion. Then you hear in State House, tea is taken daily and they spend 2 million on tea. Oh God, hear this, on tea. Day of judgment is coming. We might not be able to judge you the right way, but God will judge you. I am reminding you again, Honorable Soro, and your government, that there's an equalizer, it is death. These cars will be left here, and you'll go to your God empty-handed. Please remind them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Honorable Fatma, the cars are really scaring you. Thank you. Well spoken. Let's have Honorable Catherine Omanyo on the same.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm just topping up because most of our honorable members have actually given a lot. I was saying borrowing is not bad, but borrowing to do what? We have to borrow to promote economic growth. Because if we borrowed and said every county must have an industry, a running factory, and something that employs our youths, so we can increase people who pay taxes without increasing taxes, then that way we will be promoting our economic growth by actually having something that we can use to repay the taxes. I am very sure Kenyans are not afraid to pay these taxes, but also the borrowing and then the corruption that is not sealed, those gaps that have allowed people to just chew over 2 billion a day and nothing happens to such people, it makes the country bleed more. And I was also saying that the report is good, but then how do we actually come in to see our spending reduced? Because just like my colleague has said, you can see one governor or the president or even the vice president, deputy president, being escorted to just go for lunch with a fleet of over 50 cars and those pikipikis that escort them in style, making sure that they stop everybody fast. The person you are stopping was rushing maybe to sell sukuma wiki, to sell fruits, but the president is passing. So everything stops so that the president passes. Every minute, every hour a Kenyan has been wasted for was time for them to create or build the nation. I see MPs abroad who just sit in a train. Somebody tells you this is the MP. You're like, what? I was in Berlin the other day and they told me the former, this Angela Merkel, goes just across to the supermarket and buys her things, the chancellor buys her things, sits in a train to go to wherever she wants to go and comes back. So we need to actually cut down public spending. That is what is costing Kenyans more, because you'll see the spending is just ridiculous on things that we don't need. They are wants, meaning they can do without. So if I cut my coat according to my size, like Kenya, we know where we belong, everybody from the president to the smallest person in Kenya, then I think we will be doing a lot of justice to our nation and not remain as beggars the way people see us. In fact, you can go to greet somebody and they just know that you have come to beg, especially when you go abroad. And yet you just maybe wanted to see or pay a courtesy call. So we need to improve. All of us must be responsible in how we manage this. The other day I was on a pikipiki and I felt really nice. I was on a boda boda and I paid 200 shillings. And I didn't waste time because there was jam. And two, I didn't spend a lot of money. So I was like, what if everybody else did this? Let people start getting used to seeing us live just simple. Also, wananchi have put our status too high, that when you arrive with a boda boda in a meeting, they say this one has nothing. This one will go to eat our money. We don't even elect this one. Now, if you arrive in a big car, V8, now this one is now our person. So we need also to go down and educate our people that being a member of parliament or being a president or governor, it doesn't mean you have to arrive in style with a fleet of 30 vehicles for you to prove a point that you can be a honorable member. So it's all of us to change our mindset to be adjusted into just living simple, but making sure that the country is safe for all of us and future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. There being no other interest to speak on this particular motion, may I call upon the mover to reply?
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the honorable members for taking their time and being patient to discuss this important report. As a committee, we appreciate the positive comments on this report. It is good that now, honorable members, you do realize that the elephant in the room is actually public debt in this country. It is important that as a House, we give it the kind of attention it requires so that we get it right. And what that means is that, honorable members, in terms of timing, the issue of debating this report, it is good we get it right so that the debate informs our final decisions. I'm very blessed, Honorable Speaker, by the comments which have come from these members. A number of things have been said, very important things. It is time we trim our expenditure or we cut our cloth as per our size. It is time we get a very clear and detailed debt register, as Honorable KK was saying, so that as we move to the future, Honorable Speaker, this country, we can say how much we borrowed and where the money has gone. It is time we ensure that there is equity in the utilization of all the money borrowed. It is time we ensure, Honorable Speaker, that we have intergenerational equity also, so that we don't overburden our future generations. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply and request that pursuant to Standing Order 53.3, you defer putting of the question to another sitting. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. We shall defer the putting of the question to the next session. Honorable members, on behalf of the House, and given that members are proceeding for short recess, on behalf of the Honorable Speaker and the House, we want to wish all the members very well as they depart to their respective constituencies. We may be upstanding, and the honorable members, and the time being 7 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 25th July, 2023 at 2:30 p.m.